You ever scroll through your phone and feel like something's just off? Like we're more connected but somehow lonelier, louder but less heard. We post everything but feel nothing. Social media was supposed to make life easier, more open, more real. But instead, it's full of contradictions we don't even notice anymore. That's what this video is about. The paradoxes, the tension, the stuff that messes with our heads even when we think we're just scrolling for fun. But before that, drop a quick comment and let us know where you're watching this from and what time it is for you. It's amazing how we're all connected, each of us chasing that perfect night's sleep. If this resonates with you, please like this video, subscribe to our channel Restwise, and join the journey. Now, get comfy and let the social media paradoxes guide you into a peaceful sleep. The connectivity paradox. You ever scroll through your phone at night, bouncing between apps, deeming people, liking posts, tapping stories, and still feel completely alone? Like, you know you're technically connected to hundreds or even thousands of people. But there's this weird emptiness that follows you around. Like something's missing. And it's not just you. That feeling right there is what we're diving into. This era was supposed to be the most connected we've ever been. You can message someone in Japan while sitting on your toilet in Detroit. You can FaceTime your grandma while ordering pizza. You can livestream your whole day and get hearts from strangers in Brazil. But somehow, even with all that, more and more people are saying they feel lonelier than ever. And that's not just some sad vibe people post for attention. That's showing up in studies. There was one done by the American Journal of Preventive Medicine that found people who use social media for more than 2 hours a day are twice as likely to feel socially isolated. Not a little more lonely, twice as likely. So what's going on? Because on paper, this stuff should be making us feel more connected, more plugged in, like we're part of something. But it's kinda like drinking salt water. You keep sipping because you're thirsty, but it never satisfies you. It just makes you thirstier. Now here's the trap. The more disconnected you feel, the more you reach for connection. You open Instagram, you scroll TikTok, you check your DMs, you reply to a snap, you text someone you haven't talked to in a while just to feel something. But half the time, what you get back isn't real connection. It's a meme, it's a one-word reply, it's a like with no context, or worse, silence. So what do? You go back in for more. You post something. You try to be funny. You throw a filter on your face. You use a trending sound. You try to signal to the world, hey, I'm here. Somebody see me. And if it lands, you get this little dopamine hit. Your brain lights up. You feel good for maybe 5 minutes. And then you're back to the scroll. You're watching everyone else's highlight reels while sitting in your own behind-the-scenes mess. The truth is, most of these platforms are optimized for engagement, not connection. They're built to keep you on them, not to make you feel whole. Think about it. Real connection is slow. It's awkward. It takes time. It means listening, being present, maybe even sitting in silence together. None of that works well in an algorithm. The stuff that keeps you hooked is fast, shiny, surface level. A viral tweet, a hot take, a selfie that hits just right. So we've ended up in this weird place. We're surrounded by people, yet starved for depth. We have constant notifications, but no one who really checks in on us. We can watch people live their lives in real time, but rarely feel seen in our own. And the scariest part, a lot of us have forgotten what real connection even feels like. We mistake replies for conversations. We confuse validation with intimacy. And we've started to believe that being visible is the same as being valued. It's not. There's a name for this whole thing. Psychologists call it the connectivity paradox. The idea that the more connected we become through technology, the more isolated we often feel emotionally. Because connection through screens doesn't replace connection through presence. And yeah, some people push back and say, "But I made real friends online." And yeah, that happens. It's possible. But what's the quality of those connections? Can you sit in silence with that person for 20 minutes without feeling pressure to entertain or perform? Because that's usually where real connection lives. Not in the back and forth, but in the comfort of just being with someone. Even the way we communicate has shifted. Emojis replaced facial expressions. Text replaced tone. We've become fluent in reacting, but rusty in relating. And yet, we keep doing it. Because the alternative is uncomfortable. Calling someone. Too intense. Meeting face to face. Takes effort. Vulnerability. Who's got time for that? But what's the cost of avoiding it? We end up trapped in this loop. Hungry for connection. Reaching for it in ways that never satisfy. Then feeling emptier than before. So we reach again, and again, and again, until we start to believe maybe it's just us. Maybe we're broken. Maybe nobody else feels this way. Except most people do feel this way. They just don't talk about it. Because it's embarrassing to say you're lonely in a world where you're connected to so many people. It feels like you're doing something wrong. But you're not. You're just stuck in a system that confuses stimulation for connection. And that system is working exactly as designed. But what if we started to change how we use it? What if we treated social media like a tool instead of a replacement? What if instead of scrolling aimlessly at 1 a.m. hoping to feel less alone, we texted one real friend and said, "Hey, you free to talk? It's not a magic fix, but it's a start." And maybe that's how we break the paradox. By choosing connection on purpose, even if it's slower, even if it's messy, even if it's not what the algorithm wants. Because deep down, you know what kind of connection you're actually craving. And it's probably not hiding behind a screen. The Authenticity Paradox. Let me ask you something real quick. When was the last time you posted something online that was 100% you? No filter. No second guessing. No cleaning up the background or tweaking the caption 10 times so it hits right. Hard to remember, huh? Because somewhere along the way, being real started to feel risky. That's the paradox. We all say we want authenticity. We crave it. We praise it when we see it. But when it's time to show up as our actual selves, raw and unpolished, we freeze. We start editing, curating, shrinking the messy parts, amplifying the shiny ones. And here's the messed up part. The internet rewards us for it. You post something vulnerable, and you get 1 or 2 awkward likes. But post a perfect shot with the right angle, a catchy caption, and suddenly you're flooded with hearts, fire emojis, and comments telling you how cool you are. It feels good. Of course it does. But over time, you start chasing that version of yourself. The version that gets applause. Not the one that wakes up tired. Not the one who feels lost sometimes. Not the one who isn't always interesting. And slowly, without realizing it, you become your own PR team. You start asking, how will this look? Instead of, is this actually me? It's like your real self becomes this thing you have to manage, control, sell. And here's where it gets dangerous. The more curated your online self becomes, the more disconnected you feel from who you actually are. Because now you're performing all the time, even when nobody's watching. Even when the camera's off, you're still thinking in posts, in stories, in brand voice. You're not just living, you're broadcasting. And that creates this gap, this emotional gap between the person people think you are and the person you actually are. Psychologists have studied this too. There's something called self-discrepancy theory. It's the idea that the bigger the difference between your real self and your ideal self, the more likely you are to feel anxiety, low self-esteem, even depression. And social media, whether we realize it or not, stretches that gap. You start to feel like an imposter in your own life. You go viral for a joke, and now you feel like you have to keep being funny. You post a deep quote, and now people think you're wise, so you feel pressure to always be profound. You show a beautiful version of your room, and now you feel weird when it's messy and normal. So what do? You keep playing the role. You perform being authentic instead of just being. You drop a crying selfie with a caption about growth. You post a carefully written rant that still somehow makes you look good. You show your struggles, but only after they're over and wrapped up in a lesson. It's like being honest but safe, real but rehearsed, and we've all done it. Because being fully real, that makes you vulnerable. That opens you up to judgment. That's terrifying. And yeah, some people will say, just be yourself. But the internet doesn't make that easy. Because you're not just sharing with friends anymore. You're sharing with everyone. Strangers, trolls, exes, coworkers, algorithms that push your face in front of people you'll never meet. So you protect yourself. You armor up with aesthetics. You create a version of you that feels safer to present. But deep down, that starts to mess with you, because you're constantly managing the difference between how you seem and how you feel. And the worst part is, when you do see someone being real, like truly raw, awkward, human, part of you gets jealous, not of their content, but of their courage. You see someone post something that's clearly not curated, and you think, damn, I wish I could do that. But you could. You just forgot how. Because the internet trained you to trade authenticity for approval. It trained you to tweak until it's right, edit until it's safe, and slowly. It convinced you that your real self isn't quite enough. But what if that's the trap? What if the thing people actually want from you is the one thing you've been told to hide? Not the polished version, not the brand, not the avatar, just you. The imperfect, confused, brilliant, boring, real person who doesn't always know what to say or how to look but shows up anyway. Because here's the secret nobody tells you. Authenticity is magnetic, not because it's pretty, but because it's rare. It's rare to see someone not trying to win, not trying to impress, just being. And yeah, not everyone's gonna love it. Some people will scroll right past. But the ones who stay, they'll connect with you. Not the image, not the brand, you. And that kind of connection, that's the one that lasts. So maybe the way out of this paradox is to stop asking what looks right and start asking what feels true, even if it doesn't get likes, even if it's awkward, even if it scares the hell out of you. Because the people who matter, they're not looking for perfect. They're just looking for real. The privacy versus exposure paradox. You ever post something, then delete it like 5 minutes later? You stare at the screen thinking, why did I even share that? But it's too late. A few people already saw it. Maybe they screenshotted, maybe they didn't. But the feeling is the same. Exposed. That's the paradox. We're living in this age where we want privacy more than ever, but we also keep exposing ourselves. Over and over. Sometimes for attention. Sometimes for connection. Sometimes just because we're bored. We lock our doors in real life but leave our digital lives wide open. We say things like, "I value my privacy," but then we casually post our location, our routines, our family, our feelings, our faces, our food, our breakdowns, our every waking moment. And here's where it gets weird. The more we share, the more people expect us to share. You open up once, and suddenly strangers feel entitled to every part of your life. You post about your partner one time, and now if you stop posting them, people start asking questions. You show a vulnerable side, and suddenly everyone wants an update on your trauma. It's like the moment you show something, you give up control of it. You think you're in charge. But once it's out there, it's not really yours anymore. And yeah, we do it willingly. That's the crazy part. Nobody forces us. We sign up, we press share, we spill our guts on a timeline and call it freedom. But deep down, it doesn't always feel free. It feels like you're caught between two versions of yourself. The private self that wants space, quiet, control, and the public self that feels this constant pressure to be visible, relatable, entertaining. And it's exhausting, because every time you try to pull back, you feel like you're disappearing. Like if you stop posting, people will forget you exist. Like if you don't document your life, it's like it didn't even happen. So you keep sharing, not because you want to, but because you're afraid not to. And that fear, it's not in your head. There's actual research on this. A psychological phenomenon called the exposure effect. The more people see you, the more familiar and trustworthy you seem to them. And in the world of algorithms, visibility equals relevance. So now, staying private feels like a risk. You might lose engagement. You might lose attention. You might lose connection. So people overshare just to stay in the loop. Just to remind the internet they still exist. But here's the cost of that. The more you expose, the more vulnerable you become. Not emotionally. Literally. That post about your day, it tells people where you were. That photo in your room, it reveals details about your home. That venting thread, it shows your mental state. Every post is a data point. Every story is a breadcrumb. And companies, they're watching. Apps track your behavior. Advertisers profile your patterns. Your digital footprint builds a version of you that knows what you crave before you do. You ever wonder why that ad showed up right after you talked about something? That's not magic. That's exposure. So now we're walking this razor edge. We want to be seen, but we don't want to be watched. We want to be known, but not analyzed. We want to share our lives, but not have them picked apart. And you can't really win. Because if you say nothing, people assume things. If you say too much, they still assume things. You can go viral for something dumb. You can be misunderstood in 5 seconds. You can be canceled for a sentence taken out of context. And all you wanted was to share a thought. We're not built for this much exposure. That's the truth. Our minds evolved to be known by a small circle of people, a village, a family. Maybe 20, 30 people who really get us. Not hundreds, not thousands, not millions. But now everything is public by default. Privacy has become something you have to fight for. You have to dig through your settings, turn off permissions, read between the lines, monitor what you post, hold back the urge to share every detail. And that's hard, because social media makes exposure feel good. It gives you attention, praise. a temporary sense of being important. But long-term, that exposure can chip away at your sense of safety, your peace, your control. So what do? You can't live fully exposed and expect to feel protected, but you also can't go completely invisible and expect to feel connected. That's the tension. And maybe the way out of the paradox is to get clear on why we share. Not just what we share, but why. Is it because we feel pressure? Or is it because it feels right? Are we posting to connect, or just to be seen? Are we exposing ourselves for validation, or are we honoring our boundaries? Because when you know the why, you can start choosing again. Not reacting, not performing, choosing. And that's when privacy stops feeling like hiding and starts feeling like power. The validation paradox. You ever catch yourself refreshing a post just to see if someone liked it yet? Like you know it doesn't matter, but somehow it kinda does. One like, one comment, one repost. It hits you in this weird, quiet way. Like a little nod from the universe that says, hey, you exist. That's the trap right there. That's the validation paradox. We keep telling ourselves we don't need approval. We say we're confident, independent, above all that external stuff. But then we post something and instantly check to see who saw it, who liked it, who ignored it, who watched our story and didn't reply. It's not just curiosity, it's craving. We crave validation more than we want to admit. And social media makes that craving feel normal, even addictive. You could be having a good day, feeling solid. Then you post something and it flops. No one cares. Suddenly, your mood drops. Or you could be feeling low, insecure. You post something that gets attention and boom, you feel better. But only for a minute. Because that kind of validation, it doesn't last. It wears off fast. And then you need more. More likes, more comments, more proof that you're enough. And that's the paradox. We chase validation to feel secure, but the more we chase it, the less secure we actually feel. It's like trying to fill a bucket with holes. You pour in approval, but it leaks right out. So you keep pouring. And the internet loves this. It thrives on our need to be seen. It gives you just enough recognition to keep you coming back. Little hits of approval, little highs. But it also withholds it. Randomly. So you post again. You tweak your content. You study what worked. You copy trends. You start performing. And before you know it, your self-worth is being auctioned off to strangers in exchange for digital applause. That little heart button, it's not just feedback. It's become your mirror. You look into it and try to see who you are. But it only reflects what gets rewarded, not what's real. And the scary part, you start to internalize it. If people like my photo, I must look good. If my story gets replies, I must be interesting. If my post gets ignored, maybe I said something wrong. It rewires how you see yourself. There's a study out of Harvard that showed social media triggers the same brain pathways as receiving rewards like money or food. Which means every time you get digital validation, your brain lights up like a slot machine hitting jackpot. And just like a slot machine, it's unpredictable. You never know when the approval is coming. So you keep pulling that lever. Just one more post, one more story, one more shot at being seen. But underneath that hunger for likes is usually something deeper. A fear of being invisible. A fear of not mattering. A quiet voice in your head that says, if no one sees me, do I even count? That voice is real. But the answer is not in the numbers. Because no matter how many people validate you, it will never be enough if you don't validate yourself first. And I get it. That sounds cheesy. But it's true. You've probably posted something before that was honest, raw, vulnerable, and it didn't get much response. And you probably questioned it. But if it was true, if it was you, why should that truth need applause? That's where the shift happens. When you stop performing for validation and start sharing from wholeness. Not because you need permission, but because you've already accepted yourself. That doesn't mean you never want feedback. We're human. We all want to be seen. But there's a difference between wanting connection and being dependent on praise. One is empowering. The other is a cage. And the paradox is that the more you depend on others to tell you you're enough, the less you believe it yourself. But when you decide that you're enough, regardless of response, when you post something and you're proud of it, even if it flops, when you stop refreshing and start reflecting, that's when everything shifts. That's when the validation you used to chase us starts chasing you. Because confidence is magnetic, authenticity is magnetic, wholeness is magnetic, not perfection, not polish, not performance. So yeah, the validation paradox is real. And yeah, you're gonna feel it again. But the next time you feel that itch to check if people approved of you, pause and ask yourself, do you approve of you? Because if that answer's solid, the rest gets a whole lot quieter. The dopamine paradox, you know, that weird, empty feeling you get after scrolling for way too long. Like your brain's fried, but somehow unsatisfied. You didn't do anything bad. You didn't go anywhere. You were just watching reels, liking posts, laughing at random clips. But afterward you feel kinda hollow. That right there. That's the dopamine paradox. Social media is full of short bursts of pleasure. Funny videos, pretty faces, exciting headlines, 100 tiny hits of stimulation that feel good in the moment. But the more you indulge, the more drained you feel. The more you consume, the more numb you get. And here's where it messes with your head. You think you're relaxing. You think you're unwinding. But what you're really doing is flooding your brain with dopamine. Over and over. Dopamine is that feel-good chemical that gets released when your brain expects a reward. It's what keeps you chasing things. Checking, refreshing, clicking. But when that system gets overstimulated, things start breaking. Your baseline for pleasure goes up. That means regular life starts feeling boring. A walk outside, meh. Reading a book, too slow. Talking to a friend, not enough spark. Because your brain's been trained to expect fireworks every 5 seconds. It's been wired for thrill after thrill. So now, real life can't compete. That's the paradox. The more pleasure you chase in the short term, the more dissatisfied you feel in the long run. And here's the wild part. You don't even notice it happening. It's subtle. At first, you just scroll a little longer. Then you check your phone during meals. Then you can't fall asleep without watching something. Then you wake up and reach for your phone before you even breathe, and you tell yourself it's no big deal. But slowly, your attention span starts shrinking. Your mood gets flatter. Your motivation disappears. You start needing more stimulation to feel the same level of interest. And when things get quiet, you feel uncomfortable, like you forgot how to just be. Psychologists call this dopamine desensitization. The more often you flood your brain with quick pleasure, the less sensitive it becomes to it. So now you're not just chasing dopamine, you're chasing more dopamine. And the stuff that used to make you feel good, now it barely moves the needle. So what do? We keep scrolling, we keep chasing, we keep hitting that button, hoping it'll feel like it used to, but it doesn't. It's like eating candy for every meal. At first, it's amazing. But after a while, your body crashes. You feel sick, weak, numb. That's your brain on digital junk food. And look, this isn't about quitting social media. This is about understanding how it works, so it stops working against you. Because right now, most of us are just reacting. We pick up our phones without thinking. We scroll without purpose. We consume content that's been engineered to keep us hooked. And then we wonder why we feel so disconnected from our goals, from our creativity, from ourselves. The truth is, the pleasure isn't the problem. The problem is how frequent, how shallow, and how passive it's become. We used to seek joy in things that took time, things that required effort, a long conversation, a creative project, a challenge, a risk. Now, we tap and get a laugh. We scroll and feel a tiny spike. But those spikes don't build anything lasting. They just train your brain to expect more spikes. And over time, that leaves you feeling like nothing is ever enough, not exciting enough, not fast enough, not new enough. So you keep chasing the next hit, the next distraction, the next scroll. But what if the solution is the exact opposite? What if you stop chasing dopamine and start building it? What if you retrain your brain to find joy in depth instead of quick hits? It's not about deleting everything. It's about choosing more consciously. Create something instead of just consuming. Pause before opening the app. Let your brain get bored sometimes. Let your mind breathe. Because boredom isn't the enemy. It's the doorway to focus. And focus, that's where the real satisfaction lies. It's not flashy. It's not loud. But it lasts. And when you learn to delay those tiny hits of pleasure, you start unlocking something deeper. Not just dopamine, but meaning, momentum, peace. So, yeah, that empty feeling after scrolling, that's your brain quietly asking for something real. The question is, are you ready to listen? The freedom of speech paradox. Ever type something out, then delete it before posting? Not because it was wrong, but because you weren't sure how people would react. Maybe it was too honest, too risky, too different. So you played it safe. That moment right there, when you censor yourself, that's the paradox. Freedom of speech is everywhere online, but the fear of saying the wrong thing, it's louder than ever. We live in a world where everyone has a platform. Everyone can post. Everyone has a voice. But here's the twist. The more voices there are, the less room there seems to be for nuance. Say something unpopular, and you might get attacked. Say something complex, and people simplify it. Say something imperfect, and people act like it defines you. So what do? We shrink. We second guess. We start editing ourselves not for clarity, but for safety. We say what we think will get accepted, not always what we really believe. And that's where the freedom of speech paradox kicks in. We're more free than ever to express ourselves. But we're also more afraid than ever of the consequences. One sentence taken out of context can blow up your life. One post from 3 years ago can get dragged back into the spotlight. One poorly timed opinion can make you a target for strangers who don't even know you. And that fear, it doesn't just affect big creators or public figures. It's affecting everyone. Regular people stay quiet about politics, about their beliefs, even about their personal lives. Not because they don't have something to say, but because the internet taught us that speech has a cost. And in theory, that's how it's supposed to work. Freedom of speech means the government can't silence you. It doesn't mean the internet won't come for you. Because what we're dealing with online isn't censorship from the top. It's censorship from each other. And that's a whole different beast. You say the wrong thing in the wrong tone at the wrong time. Suddenly people are labeling you, dragging you, demanding apologies. Sometimes that accountability is fair, necessary. But a lot of the time, it's a performance. People piling on just to be seen, performing outrage like it's currency, picking apart other people's words just to prove they're on the right side. So now, even with all this freedom, most of us are scared to use it. We think twice. We water things down. We speak in disclaimers and emoji and soft takes. Not because we want to be unclear, but because we've learned that clarity can cost you, especially if it doesn't fit the mood of the moment. And this is where it gets really twisted. The people who shout the loudest about freedom of speech, they often don't want freedom for everyone. They want freedom for their ideas, not yours. So the comment sections turn into battlefields, not for dialogue, but for dominance. You see a take you disagree with, you don't ask why. You attack, you dunk, you ratio, and the algorithm rewards it. Conflict gets clicks, hot takes go viral, nuance gets buried. So over time, the culture shifts. Silence starts to feel safer than honesty. And that's the paradox. We're not being silenced from the outside. We're slowly silencing ourselves because we're tired. Tired of being misunderstood. Tired of being attacked for changing our minds. Tired of trying to have conversations in spaces built for outrage. But here's the truth. If everyone is afraid to speak freely, freedom of speech exists in theory, not in practice. So what's the way through? It's not about being reckless with your words. It's about being intentional. Say what you mean. Be open to learning. Own your perspective without needing everyone to agree. And maybe most importantly, start giving that same freedom to other people. Let them be messy. Let them be wrong sometimes. Let them grow. Because if we only allow speech we already agree with, we're not protecting freedom. We're killing it. You don't have to accept hate, but you also don't have to destroy every voice that challenges you. Disagreement is not danger, and silence isn't peace. So yeah, you might hesitate the next time you're about to post something honest, but maybe pause for a different reason. Not to stay safe, but to ask yourself, am I saying this because it's true, or because it's easy? Because when we stop living in fear of expression, we make space for actual dialogue, not just noise. And that's where real freedom begins. The Originality Paradox. You ever sit there trying to post something original, and your mind just goes blank, like everything you come up with already feels done? It's not that you don't have ideas, it's that they feel pointless, because someone else already said it better, or did it first, or got more views. That's the trap. That's the Originality Paradox. We live in a time where creativity is celebrated more than ever. Be unique. Be yourself. Be different. But the platforms that claim to reward originality, they actually reward sameness. You copy the trend. You follow the format. You do what works. And what works is usually what's already been done. So here we are, trying to stand out by blending in, trying to be authentic by playing the algorithm's game. And deep down, we know it. We know we're tweaking ourselves to fit into whatever mold the internet says is working this week. But what choice do you feel like you have? You spend hours creating something original, and it flops. Meanwhile, some guy lip syncs the same audio for the 10th time, and it blows up. So you start doubting your ideas. You second guess your creativity. You wonder if maybe you're just not built for this. But it's not you. It's the system. The algorithm doesn't reward originality. It rewards familiarity. It pushes content that feels safe, predictable, recognizable. So the more unique you are, the riskier you become. And that's the paradox. The world tells you to be original, but it rarely rewards you for it. Not at first, because originality feels weird at first. It doesn't fit the mold. It doesn't go down easy. It's rough around the edges. It asks questions instead of giving answers. It breaks patterns instead of following trends. And that kind of creativity, it usually doesn't go viral right away. It takes time to catch. It takes repetition. It takes belief in yourself before the numbers show up. But here's what no one tells you. Most of the content we call original now was ignored when it first came out. Think about music. Think about fashion. Think about ideas that were mocked before they were praised. Originality often gets punished before it gets celebrated. And the irony, once it is celebrated, it instantly gets copied. Someone does something fresh. It blows up. And within days, everyone's doing their version of it. It becomes a trend, a formula. So now, what started as original becomes the new normal, and the cycle repeats. This creates a weird pressure. You start chasing uniqueness like it's a product. You start asking, how do I stand out? How do I get attention? But here's the thing. Real originality doesn't try to be original. It tries to be honest. It doesn't come from trying to impress. It comes from telling the truth in a way only you can. But that's scary. Because when you're original, you're vulnerable. You don't have the numbers to hide behind. You don't know if people will get it. You don't know if it'll work. And that fear, that's real. But if you don't push through it, you'll always be stuck performing other people's ideas. And the crazy part, most people don't even realize they're doing it. They think they're being creative, but they're just remixing the same 5 things they saw that week. There's nothing wrong with being inspired, but if you only create what you think people want, you'll forget what you actually want to say. And that's the real cost. Not low engagement, not being late to the trend. The cost is slowly losing your voice. So what do? You go back to what excites you. Even if it doesn't get likes, even if no one claps at first, you create from conviction, not just strategy. You let your ideas be weird, raw, unpolished, because that's where originality lives. Not in the perfect take, not in the viral sound, but in the stuff that actually feels true. And maybe it won't blow up, maybe it won't trend, but if it's real, it lasts. And one day, someone finds it, and it hits them right in the chest. And they go, finally. Someone said it. That's the power of originality. It doesn't just entertain. It resonates. It doesn't chase the spotlight. It becomes one. So yeah, the Originality Paradox is real. But the answer isn't copying better. It's being brave enough to sound like yourself, even if no one claps right away. The Comparison Paradox. You ever see someone post a win and instantly feel like you're falling behind? Like they just got promoted, or bought something nice, or hit some huge milestone, and your stomach drops a little. You're happy for them, but also not. That right there, that is the Comparison Paradox. We're told to look up to others, get inspired, learn from their success. But what happens most of the time? We see someone thriving and feel like we're losing. Even if we were feeling fine 2 minutes ago, even if we were proud of where we were at, suddenly we start measuring everything. Our bank account, our body, our relationship, our timeline. And most of the time we come up short. That is the wild thing. You open your phone looking for connection and end up feeling behind in life. Not because you are behind, but because you are seeing a highlight reel and comparing it to your behind the scenes. You see their vacation, their perfect relationship, their viral moment, their confident selfie, and you forget they probably took 50 photos before posting that one. You forget that behind every success post might be a breakdown no one saw. You forget that a filtered win on your screen doesn't show the full mess behind it. But your brain, it doesn't make that distinction. It just sees where you are and where they are and creates a gap. And once you notice that gap, it gets hard to stop seeing it. You start doubting your own pace. You start rushing your growth. You start wondering if you are already too late. And that anxiety, it doesn't motivate. It paralyzes. That's the paradox. The more we look to others for inspiration, the more we end up feeling like we are not enough, even if we were proud of ourselves 5 seconds ago. It's this weird trap where comparison starts as curiosity but ends in shame. We tell ourselves we're just scrolling, just browsing, just seeing what's out there. But somewhere along the way, we stop observing and start evaluating. We start ranking, scoring, judging, and usually we're the ones who lose. Because let's be honest, we rarely compare ourselves to someone who is just a little ahead. No, we compare ourselves to the best, the richest, the hottest, the most successful, the most polished. And then we sit there wondering why we feel like trash. Comparison used to be about your immediate circle. Now you can compare your life to 7 billion other people with one swipe. That's not motivation. That's psychological warfare. And here's the dangerous part. Once comparison becomes a habit, it follows you offline too. You walk into a room and start wondering who is more confident. You have a conversation and worry if you sound smart enough. You finish a project and instantly doubt if it's even good. Because your brain has been trained to look sideways, to measure, to compete, to rank. But real growth, that happens when you look inward. When you ask, am I better than I was last month? Do I even want what that person has? Is this pace actually mine, or just what I think I'm supposed to do? Comparison makes you forget your own path. It pulls you into someone else's timeline. And that is the root of so much burnout, so much anxiety, so much self-doubt. You are trying to grow at someone else's speed, in someone else's shoes, chasing someone else's vision. But you can't win a race you were never meant to run. And here's what most people won't say. You don't need to compete to matter. You don't need to outperform to be valuable. You don't need to win to be worthy. Someone else's success does not subtract from yours. Just because they are thriving doesn't mean you are failing. Life is not a leaderboard, and you are not a statistic. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not small. You are becoming. And that process is never linear. It's messy, personal, quiet. So the next time you catch yourself comparing, pause. Zoom out. Ask yourself, would I still want this if no one could see it? Would I still value it if it never got likes? Because if the answer is yes, that's your path. And if the answer is no, then you were just chasing someone else's life. Let it go. Because you are not here to copy. You are not here to compete. You are here to become something entirely your own. And that journey deserves your full attention. The attention economy paradox. Ever notice how hard it is to just sit still for 5 minutes? No phone, no music, no scrolling. Just you and your thoughts. Feels almost impossible, right? Like your brain starts clawing for stimulation the second things go quiet. That's not just a bad habit. That's a system working exactly as designed. You live inside the attention economy now, and in this world, your focus is not just valuable, it's the product. Every scroll, every click, every second your eyes stay on a screen, that gets measured, packaged, sold. But here's the twist. You think you're in control. You think you're choosing what you look at. But most of the time, the platforms are choosing for you. They feed you what keeps you watching, not what feeds your soul, not what helps you grow, just what keeps you hooked. And it works. You open your phone to check one thing, and boom, you're 20 minutes deep in a rabbit hole you didn't even want. You log in with purpose and leave feeling scattered. That's the paradox. You think you're using the internet, but the internet is using you. It's feeding on your attention like fuel, and it's not neutral. It's not passive. It is engineered, aggressively, to hijack your mind. Want proof? Why do you think notifications are red? Because red triggers urgency. Why do videos auto-play? Because if they gave you a second to think, you might click away. Why does your feed never end? Because the more you scroll, the more data they get, and the more ads they can show you. Every feature has a purpose. Every delay, every ping, every recommendation. It is designed to override your willpower. And the price, your presence, your focus, your clarity. You trade all of that away, one swipe at a time. But here's the wild part. You're not even getting real value back. You're not learning more. You're not connecting deeper. You're not feeling happier. You're just getting stimulated. But stimulation without intention, that's just noise. And the more noise you let in, the less room you have for your own thoughts. So now you struggle to focus. You get bored faster. You feel like you're running out of time, even though you're spending hours doing nothing meaningful. And that's not a personal failure. That is by design, because the attention economy doesn't want you to be still. It wants you to be addicted, and addiction doesn't look like shaking in a corner. It looks like checking your phone before you even get out of bed. It looks like opening an app without knowing why. It looks like never finishing a book because your brain has forgotten how to sit with a single thing for more than 10 seconds. But here's where it gets dangerous. The less attention you have, the easier you are to manipulate. Because if you can't focus, you can't think deeply. You can't challenge what you're told. You can't reflect. You can't grow. You just consume, react, repeat. And in a world where everyone wants your attention, the person who learns to protect it, that's power. Because attention is not just a resource, it's your life force. Where your attention goes, your time goes. Where your time goes, your life goes. So if your attention is always on someone else's content, someone else's agenda, someone else's story, when do you get to live yours? This is not a guilt trip. This is a wake-up call. Because the attention economy is not going anywhere. It's only getting smarter. Smarter at tracking. Smarter at personalizing. Smarter at keeping you hooked. So your defense has to be stronger. That means building habits that protect your mind. That means learning to sit in boredom again. That means choosing depth over speed. It means asking yourself, is this thing I'm watching actually serving me? Or is it just numbing me? Because here's the truth nobody says out loud. If you don't control your attention, someone else will. And they will use it to make money, not to make you better. So, yeah, the internet is incredible. It can teach you anything, connect you with anyone. but only if you are the one steering the wheel. So every time you unlock that screen, ask yourself a simple question. Am I escaping something right now, or am I choosing this moment on purpose? Because that little difference, it changes everything. The empathy paradox. You would think that with all this connection, all these platforms, all this instant access to each other, we would be more empathetic than ever. We see people's stories every single day, their struggles, their heartbreak, their opinions, their pain, but somehow we feel less moved, less shocked, less human. That is the empathy paradox. The more we see of each other, the less we feel for each other. At first, it sounds impossible. How could more exposure lead to less emotion? But it does, because there is a cost to constant connection, and that cost is emotional burnout. When your brain is flooded with other people's lives all day, it stops registering them as real. You see a video of someone crying after a loss. You scroll. You see someone posting about injustice. You scroll. Someone's celebrating, someone's grieving, someone's begging for help, and you just scroll. Not because you are a bad person, because your brain is overwhelmed. Psychologists call it desensitization. When you are exposed to too much emotional content, especially pain, over and over again, you start to go numb. It is your mind's way of protecting you, because you were never built to feel the weight of the world every morning before breakfast. You were not designed to care about 100 strangers' tragedies before noon. But social media doesn't care. It keeps feeding you more. So now we live in this weird place where everything is emotional and nothing hits. Tragedy becomes content, pain becomes background noise, and empathy becomes performance, because the internet taught us that it is not enough to feel something. You have to post that you feel it. You have to have the right take, the right timing, the right caption. And if you don't, then people assume you do not care. So empathy becomes a game of optics. You see it in the comment sections. One person shares their story, and instead of listening, people start debating it. Instead of comforting them, people start correcting them. Because the goal is no longer connection. The goal is being right. That's what happens when empathy becomes content. It becomes diluted. It becomes competitive. It becomes fake. And here's the part that stings. The more we perform empathy online, the less we practice it in real life. You scroll past people begging for attention, but ignore the friend who is slowly withdrawing. You write a thoughtful comment on a stranger's post, but forget to check on someone you love. You share a cause to raise awareness, but do not change a single thing about your own behavior. And you start confusing visibility with compassion. But they are not the same. Just because you saw it doesn't mean you understand it. Just because you reacted doesn't mean you helped. Just because you know someone is hurting doesn't mean you actually showed up. That is the paradox. We are surrounded by suffering and starving for sincerity because it is easy to feel something for 5 seconds. It is hard to carry that feeling into action. It is easy to say you care. It is hard to slow down, stay present, and listen without judgment. But that is real empathy. Not loud, not performative, not polished. Empathy is when you see someone going through it, and instead of offering advice, you just say, "I see you. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." But we are losing that because speed is more important than depth now, and the algorithm does not reward quiet care. It rewards outrage, drama, hot takes. So we scroll, we skim, we move on. And slowly, we lose touch with what it means to feel someone else's pain. not analyze it, not debate it. Just feel it. So what do? You go back to basics. You turn the volume down. You pause when something moves you. You sit with it. You reach out to real people. You check in on friends without needing a reason. You stop needing the world to watch every time you care, because real empathy is not loud. It is consistent. It is what happens when nobody is clapping, nobody is sharing, nobody is looking, and that might never go viral, but it changes lives, one quiet moment at a time. The Identity Paradox. You ever catch yourself wondering who you even are anymore? Like you used to have a clearer sense of self, what you liked, what you stood for, what you believed. But now, it feels a little murky. You change the way you speak depending on the app. You adjust your opinions depending on the crowd. You post things that don't even feel fully you, just what fits. That's the Identity Paradox. You have more tools than ever to express yourself, but somehow it's never been harder to actually know yourself. We are told to be authentic, to be ourselves, to be bold and different, but at the same time, we're also told to be liked, to be approved of, to be marketable. And that pressure, it shows up everywhere. You start building an identity that's optimized for the algorithm. Not your truth, not your heart, but what gets views, what gets validated, what doesn't stir the pot too much, and over time, it starts to wear on you. You post things you don't fully believe. You hold back parts of yourself because you're scared they won't land. You reshape your entire presence to match a version of yourself that feels safe, but fake. And then you wonder why you feel disconnected. Why you feel like a stranger in your own skin. It's because you've been performing so long, you forgot who you were without the audience. That's what social media does. It turns identity into branding. It turns your personality into a profile, your life into a feed. And what was once you becomes something you curate, tweak, polish, edit, until you are no longer sure which parts are real and which parts are just survival. This is not about hating the internet. This is about seeing the cost of performing all the time. Because the more you shape yourself for approval, the more you disconnect from your center, and it starts young. You learn quickly that being too loud, too weird, too emotional gets punished. So you adapt. You become quieter. You become more pleasing. And now, with a phone in your hand, that adaptation never ends. Every like is feedback. Every comment is pressure. Every post is a test. And slowly, the self gets replaced by a persona. One you feel obligated to keep up, even if it no longer fits. Even if it never did. That's the real danger. You forget that your identity is supposed to evolve, supposed to change, supposed to stretch and breathe and grow. But when you live online, there's a record of everything. Every old opinion, every past version of you. And suddenly, you feel trapped by your own history, scared to change your mind, scared to shift, scared to say, hey, I'm not that person anymore, because someone will dig it up. Someone will call you fake. Someone will say you've changed. Like that's a bad thing. But here's the truth. You are supposed to change. You are supposed to outgrow versions of yourself. You are supposed to learn and unlearn and shift directions. That is not fake. That is human. But the internet does not like nuance. It wants clarity, cohesion, consistency. It wants you to pick a box and stay there. And if you try to step out of it, the criticism is instant. You're a sellout. You're confused. You're not real anymore. But maybe what's not real is the version of you that never changes. Maybe the most real thing you can do is let yourself evolve out loud, even if it's messy, even if people don't get it, even if it means breaking the image you worked so hard to build. Because no image is worth your peace, and no amount of approval is worth living disconnected from your actual self. So if you feel lost right now, you are not broken. You are just surrounded by systems that profit from your confusion. And the more confused you are about who you are, the more they can sell you things to fix it. So the way out isn't clearer branding. It's deeper honesty. It's asking the question, if nobody could see me, what would I still choose to be? If there were no likes, no shares, no audience, who would I be willing to become? Because the answer to that's the real you, and that version deserves space, even if it does not fit inside a perfect little profile. Mindfulness Paradox. Try this. Put your phone down, close your eyes, take one deep breath. Now tell me, how long did you last before your brain started screaming to check something? It's weird, right? We live in a time where everyone's talking about mindfulness, presence, inner peace. There are apps and books and reels telling you to be calm, breathe, slow down. And yet, somehow, we've never felt more scattered. That's the paradox. The more we obsess over mindfulness, the less of it we actually experience. It's not that we don't want it. We crave it. Deep down, we all want to feel grounded, focused, connected to the moment. But the moment keeps slipping away, because everything around us is built to pull us out of it. Our phones buzz, our feeds update, our minds race. You try to sit still, and your fingers twitch for a screen. You try to focus, and your brain starts rehearsing a dozen unfinished conversations, unread messages, missed posts. You try to be present, but something always drags you out. Here's the part nobody likes to admit. Stillness is uncomfortable now. Being alone with your own thoughts feels like work, and we've been conditioned to escape that work at all costs. Every quiet moment becomes a trigger for distraction. You open a new tab. You check your phone. You scroll through someone else's life, so you don't have to sit with your own. The second things slow down, you speed them up again. Not because you're weak, but because this world taught you that silence is a problem to be solved, not a space to be embraced. And just to make it more confusing, you think you're being mindful because you're surrounded by mindfulness content. You're saving posts about deep breathing, liking quotes about stillness, following wellness influencers who talk about presence. But that's not practice. That's consumption. That's mental fast food disguised as spiritual nutrition. It feels like growth, but it's just noise wearing a calm face. True mindfulness doesn't ask for attention. It doesn't trend. It doesn't need an aesthetic. Real mindfulness shows up when you feel that tension in your chest and sit with it instead of pushing it away. When you get bored, and instead of distracting yourself, you get curious about the boredom. When you're anxious, and you stay with the breath instead of numbing it with another scroll. It's not glamorous. It doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it's actually really uncomfortable, but it's real. It's yours. It's the only place you actually get to meet yourself. And the system hates that, because the more mindful you are, the less influence it has over you. The less you react, the less you consume, the less you need. Mindfulness ruins the business model of platforms that feed on your distraction. So you're constantly being pulled away from presence. Your attention gets hijacked by everything urgent and none of it important. You check your phone more than you check in with yourself. You lose whole hours to content you won't remember 5 minutes later. And the saddest part, you start believing that focus, clarity, peace, they're just not for you. Like you're the problem, like you're not disciplined enough. But you're not broken, you're just overstimulated. You're living in a world that rewards you for being reactive and punishes you for being still. And so mindfulness becomes something else to chase, another performance, another thing to feel guilty about not doing enough of. But the truth is, it doesn't take a retreat or a perfect routine. It starts right here, right now, in the space between notifications, in the moments where you just pause, take a breath, and notice what's happening inside you without needing to change it. That's it. That's the practice. And it's not about doing it perfectly. It's about remembering, over and over, coming back to yourself, even after being pulled in 100 directions. Especially after, because the world will keep demanding your attention. It will keep giving you reasons to stay busy. But you can choose to come back. You can choose presence, even when everything around you is screaming for speed. And that choice, that quiet, radical choice to slow down in a world that wants you sped up, that's where peace starts. That's where you start to feel human again. Echo Chamber Paradox. Have you ever noticed how everything you believe just keeps getting more and more confirmed? Like you'll see a video that lines up perfectly with your opinion, and you go, "Yep, that's exactly what I've been saying." Then the next video does the same, and the next. And before long, you feel smarter, more validated, more sure than ever that you're on the right side of things. That's not a coincidence. That's not clarity. That's the echo chamber doing its job. This is where it gets weird. We use social media thinking it'll expose us to more information, more perspectives, more truth. But in reality, it keeps feeding us the same ideas over and over until they feel like facts. It's the echo chamber paradox. You go online looking for truth, and you end up reinforcing your own biases instead. And you don't even realize it's happening, because it doesn't feel manipulative. It feels comfortable. It feels like confirmation, like you've finally figured things out. You think you're becoming more informed, but what's actually happening is you're getting more confident in your own limited view. And it's not just politics or opinions. It's everything. Health, relationships, identity, beliefs. You start curating your feed around what makes you feel good, what matches your vibe, what aligns with your worldview. And the algorithm, it notices. It watches what you like, how long you pause, what you share, and it starts shaping your experience around that. So before you know it, your version of reality is just a tailored loop of yourself, a digital mirror, reflecting back exactly what you already think. Now at first, that feels empowering. You feel seen. You feel validated. But over time, it becomes limiting, because you stop being exposed to anything that challenges you. And without challenge, there's no growth, no nuance, no humility. Just louder versions of the same opinion, echoing back louder and louder, until it becomes the only thing you can hear. That's not education. That's indoctrination. And it's not happening in some sketchy corner of the internet. It's happening in your feed. Every single day. Studies have shown this too. The more personalized your digital environment becomes, the less likely you are to encounter viewpoints that differ from your own. It's not just that you're in a bubble. It's that the walls of that bubble are invisible. And when something does get through, when you do see a post that contradicts your beliefs, your instinct is to reject it, not question it. because your brain has gotten used to the dopamine of agreement. That little rush you get when someone says exactly what you were thinking. That feeling of being right, being righteous. But that feeling is addictive. And like any addiction, it distorts your ability to think clearly. You stop evaluating arguments, you start evaluating alignment. Does this fit with what I already think? Yes, then I trust it. No, then it must be wrong. That's how people get radicalized. Not all at once, not dramatically, slowly. By being surrounded with more and more content that feels true, until anything that doesn't match feels like a threat. And here's the scariest part: you can be completely convinced you're thinking for yourself, when, really, the system is just thinking for you. And it gets worse, because every side thinks the other side is in the echo chamber. Nobody thinks they're the one being manipulated. Everyone thinks they're the free thinker. They're the ones seeing clearly. And that's what makes it so hard to break. Because the moment you start to question it, you feel like you're betraying your side, like you're being disloyal to the tribe. And that fear of being wrong, that fear of being judged, misunderstood, rejected, that's what keeps the echo chamber alive. So what's the way out? It's not easy. It means being uncomfortable on purpose. It means actively seeking out opinions that make you think, not just the ones that make you nod. It means asking real questions, not sarcastic ones, not gotchas, real ones. It means listening not to reply, but to understand. And most of all, it means letting go of the need to always be right. Because truth isn't loud. It's not always convenient, and it rarely comes in the form of a trending clip with music and subtitles. Truth takes effort, curiosity, doubt, humility. And those things do not thrive inside an echo chamber. They suffocate there. If you really want to be informed, if you really want to think for yourself, then you have to be willing to get uncomfortable. To let go of the dopamine rush of agreement. To risk being wrong, because sometimes the most intelligent thing you can say is, "I'm not sure yet." Performance paradox. You ever catch yourself doing something just because it would look good in a photo? Like you're at this incredible place, sun hitting just right, something beautiful is happening. But instead of just feeling it, your brain goes, "Wait, let me get a shot." You're not even experiencing the moment. You're documenting it, planning the caption before the feeling even lands. That's the trap. That's the performance paradox. We say we want to live, to be present, to make memories, but we keep performing instead. Performing happiness, performing confidence, performing connection. Because somewhere along the way, the camera stopped being a tool and became the audience. It became the purpose, the validator. You go to a concert and people have their phones up the whole time. They're filming the chorus they already have 20 videos of just to prove they were there. But were they really? Were you? Because you're not watching the artist. You're watching your screen watch the artist. You're not dancing. You're trying to stay in frame. And it's not just big events. It's the everyday stuff too. You go to a cafe and your coffee's getting cold while you're styling the foam. You're on a walk, and instead of breathing in the world, you're scanning it for content. That sunset, that outfit, that friend laughing. All of it gets filtered through the question, will this get engagement? And here's where it gets sneaky. It doesn't feel fake. It feels fun, creative, even expressive. But if you stripped away the camera, if there was no post, no audience, no likes, would you still be doing what you're doing? Would it still matter? That's the uncomfortable part, because more and more, the answer is no. The experience becomes secondary to how it looks. It's not enough to feel it. You have to prove it. Share it. Package it. Make it look good. Even your joy starts to feel like a job. And the pressure builds. Because once you start performing, the performance never ends. You show people your highlight reel, and then you have to live up to it. You post that perfect version of your life, and now you feel like you have to maintain it. Keep the aesthetic consistent. Keep the energy high. Keep the image clean. So even when you're exhausted or sad or just empty, you smile for the camera. You pretend. Because that's what people expect now. That's what gets approved. But that kind of pretending chips away at you. Slowly, quietly. You start feeling disconnected from your own life. You don't even know what's real anymore. Did you enjoy that day or just capture it well? Do you like this version of yourself, or do people just like it online? The camera becomes the mirror. You're constantly adjusting yourself based on what looks right, what performs well, what fits the algorithm. And over time, you forget how to just be, how to sit in a moment without curating it, how to laugh without recording it, how to live without documenting it. And what's wild is that deep down you know this. You've felt it. Those rare times when your phone dies and something amazing happens. And suddenly, without even meaning to, you're fully there. You're listening. You're breathing. You're laughing and you're not thinking about how it looks. You're just in it. And it hits different. It feels whole. Pure. Real. But then your phone turns back on and the spell breaks. You scramble to recreate the moment, try to share it, post it, and somehow it already feels less real. That's what this paradox costs us: realness, presence, memory. We end up with hours of footage and almost no internal experience of the thing itself. We remember the post, not the moment. The likes, not the feeling. The image, not the meaning. And the scariest part is we're teaching ourselves that if it's not seen, it doesn't count. If it's not posted, it didn't happen. So we live for the lens, not the life. We chase aesthetics, not authenticity. And we forget that the best parts of being alive are often quiet, messy, unrecorded. They don't go viral. They just stay with you. And they only happen when the performance stops. So the question isn't how to perform better. It's how to stop. How to reclaim your own attention. How to feel something for yourself without needing it to be seen. Because the most beautiful moments are usually the ones no one else sees. They're the ones you don't post. You just live them. And they live in you. The Activism Paradox. You know that feeling when you share a post about something important. A protest, a crisis, a cause. And it feels like you did something. Like your voice mattered. Like you contributed. And to be fair, it feels good. It feels right. You're spreading awareness. You're showing people what matters. But here's the part nobody really wants to talk about. Sometimes, that feeling of action replaces the need for action. That's the paradox, the Activism Paradox. We're more vocal than ever, more aware, more online, more engaged. But in a strange way, we're doing less. The internet gave everyone a megaphone, but it also made a lot of us forget how to move our feet. It's wild, right? You can scroll through dozens of posts in a single day about injustice. You can learn about something happening on the other side of the planet in seconds. You can amplify a message to hundreds of people with a double tap. But after that, what? You move on. You feel like you did your part because you reposted a story or dropped a comment or used the right hashtag. And this isn't about shame. It's not like people are lazy or fake. It's that the system is designed to reward visibility over effort, reaction over results. Because online activism gives you something that real-world action can't always give right away. Instant feedback. You post something powerful, and people like it. They share it. You get that rush of impact. That dopamine spike that says, yes, this matters. And it does matter, but it's incomplete. Because awareness is just step one. If nobody takes step two, the whole thing stalls. And sometimes that flood of digital support can actually prevent people from taking further steps. Psychologists call it slacktivism. It's when the social reward of appearing to care replaces the harder work of actually doing something. You might think that sharing is helping, and to a point, it is. But studies have shown that people who express support for a cause online are often less likely to follow through in real life, because their brain checks it off the list. Like, cool, I did my part. But did we? Did anything change? Were any policies influenced? Was any money donated? Were any bodies present at a town hall or a protest or a school board meeting? That's the gap. We're louder, but not deeper. Louder, but not longer. Loud for 24 hours, then on to the next thing. And the more we do this, the more activism becomes performance. It becomes branding. People start curating their values to match their feed, sharing what looks good, what aligns with the algorithm. Because if you post too much about the wrong issue, you lose followers. If you stay quiet too long, you get called out. So people start acting out of fear, not out of purpose. They're not thinking about change. They're thinking about optics. And once again, the camera replaces the cause. Even worse, algorithms start to reward controversy. So outrage becomes the currency. You don't just spread awareness. You compete for attention. And the more dramatic you are, the more engagement you get. The cause becomes content. The mission gets lost in the noise. And suddenly, we're all scrolling past injustice like it's entertainment. Click, react, swipe. Next. There's no room for depth, no room for context. Just a feed full of tragedies and hot takes and empty gestures. But here's the real tragedy. People do care. Deeply. But caring alone is not enough. We have to unlearn the idea that caring equals action. Real activism is slow. It's unglamorous. It's showing up to meetings that no one live streams. It's having conversations that don't trend. It's organizing carpools, knocking on doors, voting in local elections, donating even when no one sees it. It's following up after the headlines fade. It's holding your values even when they're not aesthetic. The paradox isn't that online activism is fake. It's that it's incomplete. It feels full, but it's hollow. It looks strong, but it's fragile. And the danger is, if we don't bridge that gap, we'll build a generation that's hyper, aware, and totally immobilized. Informed, but inactive. Passionate, but passive. We'll be surrounded by voices shouting for change, while nothing underneath actually moves. So what now? Maybe the next time something hits you, don't just post. Pause. Ask what the second step is. Ask what you'd do if you couldn't post about it at all. If there were no likes, no claps, no story views. Would you still care? Would you still act? Because that's where real activism lives. Not in what people see, but in what you do when no one is watching. The influence paradox. You ever follow someone online who seems like they have it all figured out? Perfect skin, perfect mindset, perfect routines, perfect advice. They're telling you how to live your life, how to wake up, what to eat, how to think, who to cut off, what supplements to take. And you start to feel like, damn, maybe they really know something. But here's what hits later. A lot of these people are shaping lives they don't even live themselves. That's the paradox. The influence paradox. The people telling you how to be your best self are sometimes playing a character they can't even keep up with. And it's not just one or two influencers. It's a pattern. It's baked into the system. You're rewarded not for being real, but for being aspirational. Not for honesty, but for authority. The more confident you sound, the more people believe you. So you've got 22-year-olds giving relationship advice like they've been married twice. You've got fitness influencers selling training plans they didn't use to get their own bodies. You've got mental health content that's just buzzwords and vibes, no actual substance behind it. But it looks good. It sounds good. So we trust it. And that's the wild part. We trust people we don't even know to shape how we eat, how we dress, how we feel about our lives. We give them access to our brains, and we don't even realize it's happening. Their routines start becoming our routines. Their values start becoming our values. We internalize their standards without ever asking where those standards came from. But the person behind the screen, sometimes they're struggling. Sometimes they're burnt out. Sometimes they're not doing any of the things they're preaching about. And they'll admit it later in some breakdown video or rebranding post. But by then, the influence has already landed. The impact is already in motion. And it creates this weird tension, because we start to judge our lives against advice that wasn't even authentic. We feel behind because we're not journaling every morning or hitting the gym 6 days a week or monetizing our passions. We feel like we're not disciplined enough, not spiritual enough, not clean enough, not rich enough. All because someone online made their highlight reel look like a blueprint, like a step-by-step guide to happiness. But it's not a guide. It's marketing. It's storytelling. And sometimes it's a flat-out lie. Even worse, the more curated their content becomes, the more pressure you feel to live up to it. So you start performing too. You buy the same products. You wear the same outfits. You mimic their language, their routines, their tone. And before you know it, your sense of self starts eroding. You're not choosing what works for you. You're trying to fit into someone else's aesthetic. But the crazy part is, they're doing the same thing, chasing trends, watching what performs, shaping their content to survive the algorithm. So who's actually living? Who's being real? And here's where the paradox fully locks in. We crave authenticity, but we reward performance. We say we want real people, but we click on perfection. We want influencers to be relatable, but only if they're still aspirational. It's like walking a tightrope. Be vulnerable, but not too vulnerable. Be inspiring, but not too fake. Be honest, but also keep your brand clean. And eventually, even the influencer doesn't know where the act ends and the person begins. They lose themselves trying to guide others. And the followers, they're following a version that doesn't exist anymore. This doesn't mean all influence is bad. There are people out there trying to do it right, trying to share what actually helps, trying to stay grounded, trying to lead with honesty. But the system doesn't make that easy. The algorithm doesn't reward nuance. It rewards extremes, certainty, speed, hooks, hot takes, and that forces even the most well-meaning creators to polish, to script, to edit themselves into something sharper than real life. So if you're someone who scrolls through all these motivational clips, productivity hacks, aesthetic routines, life advice. Here's the question to hold in your back pocket. Does this actually serve you? Or is it just someone else's projection? Are you being guided, or are you being sold an identity? Because real influence should empower you, not pressure you. It should meet you where you are, not make you feel like you're always behind. Maybe the real flex isn't following someone who looks like they have it all figured out. Maybe it's learning to trust yourself, to experiment, to fail, to try things, toss things, live things, without asking someone online for permission first. Because the only influencer who actually knows your life is you. The cancel culture paradox. You ever see someone get dragged online and think to yourself, yeah, they probably deserved it. Maybe it was something awful they said years ago. Maybe it was some shady behavior that finally got exposed. And the comments are just going in. Screenshots, callouts, demands to unfollow, sponsors dropping them, people celebrating their downfall like it's a sport. And maybe it feels right. Like accountability is finally happening. Like justice is being served. But then you pause, and you start to wonder, is this really justice? Or is it just a public execution with better lighting? That's the cancel culture paradox. It starts with a noble goal, accountability, but it ends up looking a lot like mob justice. Because let's be real, the internet is fast. It doesn't wait for nuance. It doesn't care about full context or changed behavior. Once something surfaces, you're guilty. People pile on, not because they all care deeply, but because it's easy. It's easy to be outraged. It's easy to repost a call-out and feel morally superior. And it's fun in a dark way. Canceling someone turns into entertainment. Commenters become the jury. The quote-unquote community becomes the judge. And your timeline turns into a courtroom with no rules. And the scariest part, a lot of the people doing the canceling don't even know the full story. They saw one clip, one out of context tweet, one thread, and suddenly they're certain. They're done. No chance for growth, no space for apology. Just punishment, public, permanent, and often wildly disproportionate. Because cancel culture doesn't just want an apology. It wants erasure. It wants the person gone, off the platform, out of the spotlight, out of their job, out of sight. And maybe you think, yeah, good, they caused harm. But ask yourself this, where does that line actually live? Who decides what's unforgivable? What's worth a career-ending takedown? And that's where it gets complicated, because accountability matters. Some people do need to be called out. Some people do abuse their power and need consequences. But there's a difference between accountability and punishment. There's a difference between correction and destruction. Accountability invites people to own their actions, understand the impact, make changes. But cancel culture skips that whole middle part. It skips the human part. It becomes about proving how righteous you are by destroying someone else's image. And let's not ignore what that does to the rest of us watching. You start to live in fear of being misunderstood. You censor yourself, not out of care, but out of terror. You're scared to ask questions, scared to speak, scared to change your mind, because if you slip up, you're not seen as a work in progress. You're a fraud, a hypocrite, a bad person, and suddenly you're the next target. So people stop being real. They start performing correctness instead of actually learning. They avoid tough conversations. They hide. They disengage. Because the cost of getting it wrong is way too high. And it's not just celebrities. Regular people get canceled too. Teenagers. Small creators. Workers. People who aren't equipped to handle public shaming, who don't have PR teams or brand managers or safety nets. And that kind of mass humiliation can wreck someone's mental health. There are real stories of people falling into depression, self-harm, even suicide. Not because they committed crimes, but because the internet decided they were irredeemable. And once that happens, good luck climbing back. The internet has a long memory and zero forgiveness. What's even more twisted is how cancel culture doesn't always work the way people think. Sometimes it backfires. Sometimes it makes the person more famous, more defiant, more extreme. They lean into outrage because it gives them an audience. It feeds the brand. And instead of having real conversations about harm, we end up in these endless cycles of call-outs and defenses and performative apologies, and nobody actually changes. So what do we do? How do we stay accountable without turning into a digital firing squad? It starts by remembering that people are not headlines. They're not static. They're flawed. They're messy. And most of them, not all, but most, are capable of growth. We have to build a culture that allows for that. That says, hey, you messed up, now let's talk. Let's repair. Let's learn. Not, hey, you messed up, now disappear forever. Because if the goal is justice, not revenge, then we need to get better at telling the difference. We need more listening, more questions, more reflection. We don't need to lower the standard. We need to raise the humanity. The Virality Paradox, one post. That's all it takes. One video, one clip, one photo, one sentence. Suddenly it's everywhere. Not because it was planned, not because it was explained, but because it felt like something. It hit a nerve. It sparked a reaction. And in just a few hours, it spreads to millions. People are liking, sharing, duetting, arguing, canceling, defending, crying, laughing, all off a few seconds of content. But here's where it gets messy. The thing that spreads the fastest often gets understood the slowest. That's the virality paradox. Speed and scale go up. Clarity and comprehension go down. The internet doesn't pause to check the details. It rewards the spark, not the fire. If something makes you feel instantly, you share it instantly. That's the rule now. There's no time to ask what it really means. No time to check who made it or why. No time to slow down and think. Because while you're processing, everyone else is already moving on to the next thing. So we react. We repost. We amplify. And before we've even figured out what we're looking at, it's already shaping what people believe. And that belief, it sticks. Even if the post was misleading, even if the video was clipped, even if the story was incomplete. Once something becomes viral, it becomes a kind of truth, a version of reality. And even when the full context shows up later, it's too late. People don't spread corrections. They don't go viral. The internet has already decided what the story was before it had a chance to be accurate. It's not because people are lazy. It's because virality taps into something deeper. It hits our emotions first: outrage, empathy, disgust, pride, humor. That emotional spark bypasses logic. You don't need all the information. You just need to feel something strong. That's what makes it spread. But that's also what makes it dangerous. Because viral content doesn't come with disclaimers. It doesn't say, hey, this is only part of the picture. It just shows up, demands your attention, and dares you to question it. And when enough people don't question it, that thing becomes real. It shapes careers. It ruins reputations. It launches trends. It fuels movements. It ends them. All based on something that might not even be understood yet. And that's terrifying. Because once a narrative catches fire, trying to walk it back is like whispering in a stadium. Nobody hears it. Nobody wants to hear it. The viral moment already won. Creators feel this too. If you post something deep, thoughtful, nuanced, it gets ignored. But if you post something that triggers an immediate reaction, something punchy and short and emotional, boom. Numbers, views, followers. So what happens? People start making content for virality, not for value. They oversimplify. They exaggerate. They turn real life into a punchline. Not because they're dishonest, but because the algorithm makes it clear, if you want to be seen, you better be quick and loud. And we buy into it. We let that speed become our pace. We scroll through takes, headlines, clips all day long, and we think we're staying informed. But really, we're staying stimulated. It's fast food for the mind, lots of flavor, zero depth. And eventually, that catches up to us. Because we start to confuse visibility with truth. We start to believe that what's loudest is what's most important. And we stop asking the most basic question. Do I actually understand what I just consumed? And maybe the saddest part is that real stories, important ones, the ones that actually require time and care, they get buried. Because they don't perform well. They don't spark immediate reactions. They ask for patience, for thought, and patience doesn't trend. So yeah, virality can be powerful. It can shine a light on things the world needs to see. It can give a voice to people who've been ignored. But only if we treat it with caution. Only if we stay curious instead of reactive. Because speed without clarity isn't power. It's chaos. And once the noise takes over, truth gets drowned out, lost in the scroll. Next time something takes over your feed, pause before you repost. Not because silence is safe, but because signal without understanding is just more noise. Let yourself feel the pull, but ask yourself, do I get it? Or am I just caught in the current? Because in a world where everything spreads instantly, your ability to slow down becomes your greatest filter. The Global Unity Paradox. Imagine this. A kid in Tokyo and a teenager in New York are listening to the same song at the same time, both watching the same dance trend, both laughing at the same meme. That's where we are. One screen, one app, and suddenly borders feel like they barely exist. Cultures once divided by oceans are now overlapping in seconds. And that feels like progress, right? Like the world is finally becoming a shared space. But here's the twist. As we get more connected globally, we're also growing more divided emotionally, socially, and ideologically. That's the Global Unity Paradox. We are sharing more than ever before, but understanding each other less and less. On the surface, social media makes the world feel small. You can learn slang from Brazil, watch politics unfold in Nigeria, see street fashion from Seoul, all without leaving your bed. That access is wild. It makes the idea of cultural exchange feel effortless. But when it moves that fast, that wide, and that shallow, it stops being about learning. It becomes consumption. We're not connecting with cultures. We're sampling them. We're picking out the parts that entertain us and skipping everything else. And when that happens, cultures become content. Whole identities flattened into trends. Sacred traditions turned into aesthetic. Painful histories turned into hashtags. And you might think, well, hey, that's just how things evolve. But that evolution comes with a cost. Because people start to feel like their culture is being taken, misrepresented, or mocked, not celebrated. And suddenly this thing that was supposed to bring people together starts causing friction. Now add in the algorithm. It doesn't just show you global content. It shows you content it knows you'll agree with. It knows your language, your beliefs, your habits. So while it's showing you things from around the world, it's also quietly building walls around your mind. You see more of what you like and less of what challenges you. And before long, you're in a silo, surrounded by people who think like you, laugh like you, get angry at the same things you do. That's not unity. That's just customized isolation. And this gets even more intense during conflict. When there's a war, a protest, a political crisis, suddenly your feed becomes a battlefield of perspectives. But they're not balanced. The algorithm doesn't give you a panoramic view. It gives you the loudest, most emotional, most extreme takes. And if someone from another country or culture says something that clashes with your worldview, it doesn't turn into a conversation. It turns into a fight. You stop seeing people, you start seeing enemies. Division grows. And now, instead of building bridges, we're drawing lines. Even within countries, this happens. Immigrant communities trying to share their stories online get shut down by dominant narratives. Indigenous voices get drowned out by corporate trends. Diaspora youth get mocked for being too Western or too traditional, depending on who's watching. There's pressure to represent your whole culture perfectly online. And if you mess up, you're accused of being fake, of being a sellout, of not being real enough. And that kind of gatekeeping doesn't unify. It fractures. And yet, despite all of that, we still crave unity. We still want to feel like we belong to something bigger. That's why global movements catch fire on social media. That's why people march in solidarity across continents. That's why a song in a language you don't speak can still hit you in the chest. The potential for real connection is there. It's just buried under layers of noise, ego, algorithmic control, and cultural confusion. So what do we do with this paradox? How do we stay open to the world without losing sight of the people in it? Maybe it starts with slowing down, with asking more questions than we answer, with listening before interpreting, with remembering that behind every viral post from another culture, there's a real person who doesn't live in your reality, doesn't carry your assumptions, doesn't owe you their explanation. And maybe they're trying to do the same, make sense of you, in a world that's always watching but rarely understanding, because real global unity isn't about constant visibility. It's about intentional connection. It's not just sharing space on the same app. It's sharing space in our minds and in our empathy. Otherwise, we're just digital tourists, scrolling through humanity without ever stepping inside it. The meme paradox. Sometimes the only thing keeping people sane is a stupid meme. Seriously. You could be going through the worst week of your life, and suddenly you scroll past an image of a dog with sunglasses saying something totally absurd, and you laugh out loud. Just for a second, you feel lighter. That's the magic. That's the power of humor. It cuts through stress, diffuses tension, helps you survive stuff you don't even know how to put into words. But at the same time, memes have become something else too. Something sharp. Something loaded. They're not just jokes anymore. They're commentary. They're attacks. They're shields. That's the meme paradox. Humor makes us feel safe, but it also gets used to hit hard. And sometimes, to hurt. See, in the early days, memes were just silly. Bad Photoshop, inside jokes, awkward animals. They were light. But as culture and politics started bleeding into everything online, memes evolved. They started carrying messages. Big ones. Social, ideological, even moral. Suddenly, you're not just laughing at a joke. You're aligning with a belief. And that's where it gets tricky, because humor disarms you. You let your guard down. But what happens when what you're laughing at actually reinforces something toxic, something cruel, something untrue? Memes are fast, easy to make, easy to share, but they simplify everything. They reduce complicated issues into a punchline or a stereotype. And once something becomes funny, it becomes harder to question. If you push back, you're told to relax. It's just a joke. Lighten up. But that joke might be carrying a message that sticks. Humor bypasses logic. You don't fact check a meme. You just feel it. You laugh. You move on. But the idea behind it, that stays with you. And sometimes memes become weapons. They're used to mock people, to shame them, to dehumanize them, all while hiding behind humor. Racist meme. Just a joke. Misogynistic punchline. Don't take it so seriously. Political disinformation wrapped in a cartoon. Chill. It's satire. This is how meme culture can mask malice. It becomes a safe zone for cruelty. Because if you criticize it, you're the one who's uptight. You're the one who can't take a joke. But here's the twist. Memes can also heal. They can comfort. When something awful happens, before people even find the words, someone out there makes a meme that captures the feeling. Something dark, something weird, something raw, and somehow it makes people feel less alone. It's like humor becomes a shared language for grief, for rage, for exhaustion. Especially with younger generations. They don't always cry about the world falling apart. They meme it. Not because they don't care, but because that's the only way they can express it without collapsing. Memes are emotional shorthand. They let you say what you're feeling without spelling it out. That's why they travel so fast. They give people a way to feel seen, to feel connected. You send a meme to a friend who's hurting, and it says I get it without needing a long conversation. That's powerful, that's real. But again, it's the same tool being used in two totally different ways. That's the paradox. Memes can make the internet feel like a warm, hilarious place where people just get you. But they can also make it feel hostile, shallow, and mean as hell. And the people creating memes, they're shaping culture, whether they mean to or not. One viral image can shift the way people talk about an issue. One joke can define someone's public image forever. Memes might seem throwaway, but they influence how people think. They set tones. They form group identities. They can even sway elections. Yeah, that sounds dramatic, but it's already happened. Memes are propaganda with punchlines, so here we are. Laughing through pain, roasting everything and everyone, turning joy and trauma into content. And maybe that's not always bad. Maybe humor really is how we survive chaos. But we can't ignore the edge it carries, because when we stop asking what the joke is doing, who it uplifts, who it punches down on, what it implies, we risk turning humor into a smokescreen. A way to avoid responsibility. A way to shut people down. So yeah, memes can be therapy, but they can also be a trap, relief and attack living side by side. That's the paradox. It doesn't mean we stop laughing. It means we look closer at why we are, what it says, what it costs, and whether it's lifting something up or just giving us permission to stop caring. The Algorithm Paradox. You open your phone for a quick break. Just 5 minutes. One scroll turns into 20. You look up and an hour's gone. You don't even remember choosing what to watch. It just appeared. And somehow it was exactly what pulled you in. That's the part that feels impressive. The feed knows what you like, what you engage with, what gets you to stay. But here's where it flips. The longer you spend with it, the more you start to wonder, if the algorithm is working for me, then why do I feel like it's the one in control? That's the paradox. This thing was designed to tailor content just for you. A perfect mirror of your preferences. But it doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like you're being guided, nudged, subtly pushed towards certain emotions, topics, patterns, and not always the ones that are good for you. Because the algorithm doesn't care about your well-being. It cares about your attention. That's the goal. Keep you watching, keep you scrolling, keep you coming back. That's how platforms win. So if you're wondering why your feed is full of outrage, drama, extreme opinions, and impossible beauty standards, it's because those things work. They keep people hooked. And it doesn't happen with a giant switch. It's gradual. You click on one post out of curiosity. The algorithm takes note. Oh, you paused on that video a little longer than usual. Interesting. Let's show you more like that. And more. And more. Until your feed is no longer reflecting who you are. It's shaping who you become. It's not built to show you the full picture. It shows you what's likely to keep your eyes on the screen. That's it. And when you realize that, it's kind of disturbing. Because you start to notice how predictable you are. How easy it is to trigger you. To bait you. To keep you in a loop. And that loop feels personal. But it's not. It's just data. Patterns. You're not being understood. You're being calculated. Now think about what that does over time. You start to assume the world looks like your feed, like everyone agrees with you, or disagrees with you violently. Nuance disappears, context fades. It becomes a cycle of extremes. The loudest opinions win. The most shocking stories dominate. Even if they're wrong, even if they're fake. Because truth doesn't trend, engagement does. And then there's the guilt. You tell yourself you're in control. You can close the app whenever. You can stop scrolling. You can take a break. But how many times have you said that and still stayed? How many times have you tried to reset your feed, only to have it slide right back into the same rabbit hole? You start to question your own agency. You wonder if your attention span is broken. If your willpower even matters. And that's a dark feeling, because you're not just being manipulated. You feel like you're participating in your own manipulation. And yes, you could argue it's your choice. You click the buttons. You open the app. But when everything is engineered to be frictionless, addictive, and personalized down to the second, is it really a fair fight? Especially when the system knows more about your behavior than you do. It doesn't just react. It predicts. It anticipates your next move before you make it. And then it gently places the bait right where you'll see it. What makes it more complicated is that sometimes it does help you. You discover music you love. You find creators who inspire you. You learn things you didn't even know you were interested in. That's the seductive part. The algorithm isn't just manipulative. It's also useful. It makes your digital life feel smoother, more exciting, more connected. But that's what makes it harder to step back, because you don't want to lose the good stuff. You just want to stop feeling like your brain is being hijacked. And the most dangerous part, you stop noticing it. You stop asking how things ended up on your screen. You just accept it, trust it, let it guide you. And eventually, it becomes harder to tell the difference between what you wanted to see and what the system wanted you to want. That's not personalization. That's programming. So, what do you do with that? Maybe the first step is to become more conscious, to pause when something grabs you and ask, did I choose this, or was I nudged into it? To notice the loop instead of living in it, because awareness won't stop the algorithm, but it might give you back a sliver of control. A little space between the swipe and the spiral. And sometimes that space is everything. The infinite scroll paradox. You ever catch yourself saying just one more scroll? Like you'll check one more post, watch one more video, read one more thing before you finally get up. Then suddenly it's 40 minutes later, and you can't even remember what you just consumed. That's not you being lazy or undisciplined. That's design. The whole system is built to make you lose track of time, and it does it by pretending to save it. That's the infinite scroll paradox. The feature that was meant to streamline your experience has become the exact thing that devours your hours. It all started as a convenience. Instead of loading a new page every few seconds, you just keep scrolling. Smooth, fast, endless. No friction, no pauses. But that's exactly why it works so well at wasting your time. Because there's no stopping point. There's no natural break. You don't get that moment where your brain goes, okay, time to move on. You just keep going. Like a slot machine that never needs a coin. Always loading the next thing. Always tempting your curiosity. Always rewarding your attention with just enough stimulation to keep you in the loop. And the most dangerous part is you don't notice it happening. It's not like binge, watching a show where you commit to the next episode. It's passive. You're not choosing to keep watching. You're just not choosing to stop. The app is doing all the work. It's feeding you. All you have to do is scroll. It's subtle, but powerful. Because your brain gets little dopamine hits each time something mildly interesting pops up, and that's enough to keep you there. Even if you're bored. Even if you're tired. Even if part of you knows you should be doing literally anything else. Psychologically, this taps into something called variable reward. You don't know what's coming next. Some of it is boring. Some of it is gold. But the uncertainty, that's addictive. It keeps your brain in hunting mode, always searching for the next laugh, the next hit of outrage, the next piece of content that feels good enough to justify the time you've already spent. But that moment rarely comes, because infinite scroll isn't designed to satisfy. It's designed to keep you wanting. And here's where the time distortion gets brutal. You think you've been scrolling for 5 minutes. It's been 30. You wanted to take a short break. You lost an hour. Multiply that by how many times a day you check your feed. That adds up. That's entire chunks of your life disappearing in a quiet, invisible way. You're not wasting time on purpose. You're being pulled into a system that's engineered to stretch seconds into hours. And what do you get in return? A highlight reel of other people's lives. A flood of opinions you didn't ask for. Half facts. Emotional spikes. Products you didn't know you wanted. And maybe some laughs. Maybe something useful. But most of the time, the return doesn't match the cost. It's like eating chips when you're starving. It feels like something, but it doesn't fill you. You finish more tired than when you started. The irony is that all of this was meant to enhance your time. That's what tech companies sell you. Convenience, efficiency, quick access to what matters. But that's not how it plays out. The tools built to give you more time are stealing it from you. In micro moments, in delayed tasks, in sleep lost to endless scrolling. And the worst part is how normalized it is. You're not the only one doing it. Everyone is, so it feels fine, harmless. But just because it's common doesn't mean it's not damaging. And you might think, well then just stop. Just put the phone down. But here's the trap. It's not that easy. Because infinite scroll removes all the friction. And friction is what helps you make decisions. Without natural stopping points, you don't get the internal cues that say, hey, enough. So you need to create them yourself. Set timers. Use apps that cut off usage. Design your own limits in a system that was designed to have none. Because if you don't, the scroll never ends. And not because the content is so good, but because it's just there. Always there. And you're always one swipe away from being pulled back in. The truth is, infinite scroll is not about helping you get through more content. It's about making sure you never feel done. And when you never feel done, you never feel free. The notification paradox. You hear the buzz, or the ding, or maybe you just think you heard it. You reach for your phone out of habit, not because you really care what it says, but because it might be important, might be urgent, might be something you need to know. And this happens dozens of times a day, sometimes hundreds. We've gotten used to living like this, always a little on edge, always slightly pulled away from the present moment by this tiny invisible hook called a notification. That's the paradox. We want to stay informed, connected, in the loop, but the price we pay is constant distraction. It sounds small, one ping, one badge on the screen, but those little interruptions add up. They chip away at your focus, your flow, your peace. You sit down to work, and suddenly a message lights up your screen. It's not urgent. It's not important. But now your attention is fractured. Your brain has to switch gears, and switching gears isn't free. It takes energy. It drains your ability to think deeply, to be present, to actually finish what you started. And it's not just about work. You could be having a conversation with someone you care about. Mid-sentence, a buzz, a glance at the screen. Now you're half listening, half there. You don't even mean to do it. But your attention's been rerouted. You've been trained to respond. Because that little red dot is designed to trigger you. It's built to feel urgent, even when it's not. The science behind this is brutal. Every time you get a notification, your brain releases a tiny spike of dopamine. It's the same chemical that makes gambling addictive. Your brain starts craving that little reward. And over time, you don't just respond to notifications. You need them. You check your phone even when it's silent. You get phantom vibrations. Your body literally thinks it heard something that didn't happen. That's how deep the conditioning goes. And here's where it gets messier. Most notifications are not there to help you. They're not about emergencies. They're about pulling you back into the app. A new follower, a random post you might like, someone you haven't interacted with in months just uploaded something. The platforms use notifications to re-engage you, not because it serves you, but because it serves them. Your attention is their business model. We say we want to stay informed, but what we actually get is a fire hose of micro-distractions, and it leaves us feeling scattered, drained, like we can't keep up. We tell ourselves we're being productive because we're always checking things. But real productivity, real presence, that needs silence. That needs uninterrupted thought. And that's almost impossible when your pocket is buzzing every few minutes with something new. Even worse, this kind of distraction rewires your brain. It trains you to expect interruption. So when you finally do get a quiet moment, it feels wrong. You reach for your phone without thinking. You're addicted to the noise. You crave stimulation, even if it's empty. And when there's nothing there, you feel restless, like you're missing out on something. Like silence is a problem to solve. And the irony is, we let it happen because we don't want to miss out. That's the hook. The fear of missing something important, of being out of the loop, of not responding fast enough. And in that fear, we accept the trade. We let ourselves be constantly interrupted in exchange for the illusion of staying current. But what are we really staying current with? A group chat blowing up over nothing. A sale you weren't looking for. A celebrity update you'll forget in 5 seconds. Meanwhile, the stuff that actually matters, the work you want to finish, the thoughts you want to explore, the people right in front of you, get sidelined. Not on purpose, but by design. And yeah, you can turn notifications off. You can use Do Not Disturb. You can make your phone less tempting. But the bigger shift is internal. You have to ask why you keep reaching for it. What you're afraid of missing. What you think that next notification is going to give you. Because the truth is, you're not staying informed. You're staying fragmented. That's the paradox. You get the sense that you're plugged into the world. But in reality, you're pulled away from your world, from your focus, your peace, your presence, and that tiny buzz you thought would keep you connected. That might be the very thing tearing your attention apart. The choice paradox. There's something wild about opening your phone and realizing you have access to everything. Millions of videos, aliens of posts, endless accounts, voices, opinions, aesthetics, lives, and yet somehow it all feels the same. You scroll and scroll, expecting variety, expecting something new, but most of it just blurs together. Same format, same sound, same joke, same dance, same take dressed in slightly different words. You think you're choosing from a buffet, but really, you're being served fast food over and over again. That's the paradox. You're drowning in options, but starving for originality. It's strange, because on the surface, the internet gives you more choice than any generation before us could have imagined. You can watch anything, learn anything, follow anyone. So why does it feel like you're stuck on repeat? Why does every scroll feel like déjà vu? The answer is that the illusion of choice is not the same as actual freedom. When everything is tailored to what you already like, already engage with, already click on, you're not expanding, you're looping. The algorithm isn't built to surprise you, it's built to predict you. It learns what makes you stay, what makes you swipe faster, what makes you come back, and once it knows, it just keeps feeding you more of the same. Not because that's what's best for you, but because it's what works. And that's when it starts to get weird. You think you're choosing, but are you really? If the platform only shows you a narrow slice of content, the stuff that's trending, viral, optimized for engagement, then your choices are already pre-filtered. You're picking from a menu that someone else designed, and they didn't design it to expand your worldview. They designed it to keep you scrolling, so you end up in this bizarre space where everything feels familiar, safe, palatable, but also boring, predictable. You keep looking for something that hits different, but everything feels like a remix of a remix. Even your own feed starts to feel like a trap. You want new ideas, new energy, new perspectives. But what you get is an echo, and the psychology of that is sneaky. Because your brain likes comfort. Familiar patterns feel rewarding. But over time, too much sameness becomes numbing. You get overstimulated and underwhelmed at the same time. It's like eating candy for dinner every day. Tastes great at first, but eventually you feel empty, tired, even annoyed, but still reaching for more, hoping the next piece will be different. And creators feel it too. When you try to make something original, the algorithm doesn't reward it unless it fits the mold. You post something weird, raw, personal, and it flops. But you copy the format that worked last week, and it blows up. So what do you think happens next? People start playing it safe, chasing trends, flattening their own voice to fit what's already working. Because that's how you get seen. So the cycle feeds itself. Viewers want newness, but get repetition. Creators want to stand out, but get punished for trying. And the platforms keep winning because engagement stays high even if creativity suffers. And that brings us to the hardest part. With so many options, you'd think the answer is just to dig deeper. Look harder, curate better, and yeah, sometimes that helps. But the system isn't built for discovery. It's built for efficiency. It's built to make you feel like you're choosing, while quietly nudging you into sameness. Because sameness is safe. It's familiar. It's addictive. So you have to ask, when you open your feed, are you exploring or just orbiting? Are you really choosing what you see, or are you being guided toward what's easy to like, easy to process, easy to scroll past? And the worst part is, when you're constantly fed more of what you already know, you start to mistake that for the whole picture. You stop challenging your tastes. You stop seeking the strange. You stop stretching your mind, and you might not even realize it's happening until everything starts feeling flat. That's the trap of infinite choice. You think you're free, but you're stuck in a curated loop of sameness, a digital comfort zone dressed up as exploration. So maybe the answer isn't to consume more. Maybe it's to stop, question, and choose differently. Not what's most popular, not what's trending, but what makes you pause. What feels unfamiliar? What wakes you up? Because real choice doesn't mean more options. It means more awareness. And in a world that keeps handing you the same thing over and over again, choosing differently might be the only real act of rebellion left. The platform loyalty paradox, it's kind of messed up when you think about it. You open the app, you scroll, you feel annoyed, maybe a little gross, maybe a lot, but then you're back the next day and the next. You complain about the content. You say it's toxic. You say it's fake. You say it's a waste of time. But you don't leave. Not really. That's the paradox. You hate the app, but you use it every day. And the weirdest part is you're not alone. This is more common than people admit. You'll hear someone say, "I cannot stand this platform anymore," while they're actively refreshing it. You'll see people talk about deleting it. From inside the app, there's this strange tension between knowing it's bad for you but still craving it, between judging it and relying on it. And the loyalty is real, not because the app is lovable, but because it's inescapable. You've built routines around it. It's how you stay connected. It's how you stay relevant. It's where the culture happens. The memes, the news, the drama. Everything moves through these platforms now. So even if the experience feels exhausting, you keep showing up. Because if you don't, you feel out of the loop. You feel invisible. And let's be real. The apps know this. They know you have issues with the experience. They know you complain. But they also know you'll come back. Because it's not about whether you like the platform. It's about whether you can afford to leave it. And for most people, The answer is no. You have your people there, your content, your followers, your career, maybe, your memories, your comfort scroll, and giving all that up. That feels like cutting off a limb. Even if you're angry, even if you're drained, even if you say this app sucks, you refresh the feed 10 minutes later like you never said it. And that kind of loyalty, the kind built on dependence, not joy, is powerful and dangerous because it creates a feedback loop of resentment. You use the app. You hate how it makes you feel. You complain. Then you go right back in. You feel bad, so you numb it with more scrolling. And the worse it gets, the more you stay. Because now it's emotional. Now it's not just about content. It's about habit, escape, identity. You start to feel like you need it, even if it's hurting you. Like a relationship you know is unhealthy, but can't seem to walk away from. Because there's always that one post that makes you laugh. That one reel that inspires you. That one message that hits. And you tell yourself maybe it's not all bad. Maybe this is just how things are now. But deep down, you feel it. That friction. That disappointment. That sense of every time you open the app and see more of the same. More negativity. More noise. More surface level stuff pretending to be deep. And even when you close it, it lingers. That mental fog. That low-level anxiety. That empty feeling after too much screen time and not enough soul. And here's the part most people don't say out loud. Staying loyal to something that makes you feel worse over time is not really loyalty. It's a kind of trap, a psychological grip that holds you in place with just enough reward to justify the damage. And the longer you stay, the harder it gets to imagine your life without it. But imagine it anyway. Not total disconnection. Not some dramatic digital cleanse. Just imagine a version of your day where you're not checking something you secretly resent, where you're not tied to a space that makes you feel small or angry or numb, where your attention belongs to you again, because the loyalty you show to the platform, that's energy, that's time, that's value, and you could give that to something else, something that doesn't drain you just to keep you engaged. Something that actually earns your time instead of manipulating it. The paradox is that you think you're using the app, but it's using you and doing just enough to keep you from leaving. Not because you love it, but because you forgot what life feels like without it. And maybe the real flex isn't deleting it in a burst of frustration. Maybe the real move is reclaiming your loyalty. Choosing where your attention goes, who earns it, who keeps it, because loyalty should feel good, not like a digital leash disguised as choice. The Monetization Paradox. At first, it's pure. You do it because you love it. You make things that excite you. You share them just for the thrill of it. No pressure, no audience to please, no numbers to chase, just creativity. Just curiosity. Just fun. But the second someone says you could make money from it, something changes. You start thinking in metrics. You start optimizing. You start trying to win the algorithm. And slowly, the thing you loved begins to feel like a job you didn't ask for. That's the paradox. You turned your passion into a paycheck, and now the passion feels like work. And this doesn't happen all at once. It creeps in. At first, the idea of monetizing feels exciting. You're getting paid to do what you love. It feels like a dream. Like you're beating the system. Like you've hacked life. But then you post something you're proud of, and it flops. And suddenly, your mood drops. You wonder if you should have made something else. Something trendier. Something shorter. Something safer. You start creating with performance in mind instead of expression. You pick thumbnails that will get clicks. You change your tone to match the current vibe. You water yourself down so you can appeal to more people. And now, every time you sit down to create, you're thinking about reach, about engagement, about what the algorithm wants instead of what you want. And yeah, you might grow. You might make money. You might get brand deals and viral moments. But somewhere along the way, the joy starts leaking out. You feel burned out, stuck, confused. Like you're succeeding at something you no longer enjoy. You're winning, but you don't feel like a winner. And this is so common, especially online. You start with something that's real, something that feeds your soul. Music, art, writing, skits, videos, gaming. But the second you attach a dollar sign to it, everything shifts. You start measuring your worth by your income. You start comparing yourself to others in your niche. You feel like you have to constantly one-up yourself or risk becoming irrelevant. And the worst part, the more you try to make content that works, the less connected you feel to it. The audience might grow, but your inner satisfaction shrinks. You start to dread the very thing you once looked forward to. You keep going, but it's not fun anymore. It's a performance, a schedule, a product. This happens because passion and profit run on different systems. Passion is messy. It's intuitive. It follows inspiration, not rules. But monetization is structured. It needs consistency, predictability. It rewards what sells, not always what's real. And when you mix them, it's easy for the profit side to start dominating. And people will say this is just the cost of success. That you should be grateful to be making money from your art. And yeah, it's a privilege, but it's also a trap. Because once you rely on your passion for income, it's not optional anymore. It becomes a job. And with that job comes pressure, stress, expectations. And those things are passion killers. Even if you love what you do, turning it into your main source of income can change your relationship with it completely. You're no longer doing it when you feel inspired. You're doing it when the platform demands it, when the sponsor needs the post, when the rent is due. And that kind of pressure doesn't fuel creativity, it drains it. And here's the sneakiest part. You might still be successful, still getting views, still making sales, but inside you know it's not the same. You miss when it felt free, when you weren't thinking about analytics, when you could follow a weird idea just because it lit you up, not because you thought it would perform. So, what do you do with that? How do you keep the spark alive when the fire's been turned into content? Maybe you protect some of it. Keep a part of your passion that no one gets to monetize. A project that's just for you. A creative corner that stays untouched by deadlines or dashboards. Or maybe you start asking different questions. Not how do I grow this or scale this or sell this, but how do I reconnect with what made me fall in love with this in the first place? Because, yeah, turning your passion into income can be amazing. But if you're not careful, it can turn into a slow betrayal of what made it beautiful in the first place. The paradox isn't that monetizing kills passion. It's that it replaces it with pressure. And you don't even notice until it's already too quiet to feel alive. The gig economy paradox. On paper, it sounds like freedom. Set your own hours. Be your own boss. Work when you want, where you want, how you want. No dress code. No office politics. Just you, your phone, and a stream of gigs waiting to be accepted. It feels like control. It feels like power. But when you actually live it, it hits different. That flexibility you were promised, It comes with no guarantees, no benefits, no stability, no safety net. You get the freedom, but none of the protection. That's the paradox. You have total control over your schedule, but zero control over your future. This new work culture tells you that hustle equals independence, that the ability to bounce from job to job is a flex, and for a while, it kind of is. You feel empowered. You feel efficient. You're not chained to a desk, and that feels like evolution. Until you realize that with every gig, you're rebuilding your life from scratch. No long-term contracts, no job security, no retirement plan. You're working your ass off just to stay in place. The people selling the gig lifestyle make it sound like an upgrade. But it's not a promotion. It's a trade. You traded structure for chaos. You traded benefits for apps. You traded a paycheck for a maybe. And maybe you make enough. Maybe the algorithm is kind to you this week. Maybe you get enough rides, deliveries, freelance offers to cover your bills. But maybe you don't. And when you don't, there's no one coming to help. That's where the whole thing cracks. Traditional jobs might be rigid, but they came with some kind of promise. If you got sick, you had time off. If you stayed long enough, you got a raise. If the company thrived, you felt some of that security. Now, you're alone. There's no ladder to climb, no path to promotion. Just the constant grind of piecing together enough work to survive. And the mental toll of that is no joke. Every day, you wake up with the weight of uncertainty. Will you make enough this week? Will the platform change the rules again? Will someone give you a 1-star rating and tank your ability to work? You're constantly performing, constantly adapting, constantly selling yourself. And all of it without the dignity or respect that used to come with employment. Because let's be honest, a lot of gig workers are treated as disposable, not employees, not humans with lives and struggles, just entries in an app. You get rated, not supported. You get scored, not protected. If something goes wrong, there's no manager to talk to. There's a help desk bot. There's an email that might never be answered. You're on your own, and you feel it. But here's where it really gets twisted. Even when it sucks, you still feel like you can't leave. Because what's the alternative? A traditional job that locks you in for 9 hours a day. That barely pays better and gives you less freedom. You're stuck between broken systems. One that offers security without flexibility, and one that offers flexibility with no safety at all. So you stay. You tell yourself it's temporary, that something better will come, that at least you're free. But deep down, the freedom starts to feel fake. What good is the ability to set your own hours if you're too exhausted to enjoy your life? What good is flexibility when it's tied to desperation? You start to realize that real freedom isn't just about choosing your hours. It's about having options that don't destroy you. It's about being valued, protected, paid fairly, having a future that doesn't rely on perfect ratings and relentless hustle. But the gig economy doesn't offer that. It offers tasks, not careers. It offers motion, not progress. You're always working, but never building. Always active, but never secure. That's the trap. You get just enough money to keep going, just enough autonomy to feel independent, and just enough unpredictability to keep you chasing the next gig like it's salvation. And by the time you realize you're running in circles, it's already become your norm. The paradox is that the gig economy sells you on the idea of being your own boss. But you're not. You're just a worker with no protection, trying to make freedom feel like fulfillment. And maybe that's the question we all have to ask. Are we working to live, or just living to work without a net? Because if flexibility comes at the cost of stability, how free are we really? The data paradox: you open the app, you don't think twice. It's free, no credit card, no payment screen, just sign in and scroll, just download and go. And that's the bait. That's what makes it so easy to say yes. You're not paying anything, right? But here's the thing nobody really tells you. If you're not paying with money, you're paying with something else: your behavior, your digital soul. That's the paradox. These platforms feel free, but the cost is invisible. And most people have no idea how deep it actually goes, because it's not just your name or your email or your birthday. That's the surface level. They want everything. They track what you click, how long you stare at a post, what you skip, what you rewatch, who you follow, what time you scroll, what mood you're in based on how you type. They're not just watching what you do. They're building a full psychological profile of who you are. You become the product. The content is bait to keep you engaged, but you are what's being sold. Not your attention, your predictability. Because if they can predict you, they can profit off you. Advertisers don't want eyeballs anymore. They want behavior. They want to know when you're vulnerable, when you're tired, when you're bored, when you're most likely to click buy now. And this is all done quietly, seamlessly, wrapped in the language of convenience. The algorithm is here to help you. The app is here to show you what you like. But the more it learns about you, the more it shapes what you see. It stops reflecting your world and starts creating it. You think you're in control, but you're being gently nudged. Every second, every scroll. And it's easy to say who cares. It's just ads, it's just suggestions. But over time, that data defines your experience. It filters your feed. It curates your reality. It decides what's visible and what gets buried, what voices get amplified and what gets silenced. Your entire digital world starts bending around what's profitable, not what's true. And this system isn't built to protect you. It's built to extract as much value from you as possible. Legally, psychologically, and quietly. They say your data is anonymized, but it's not. Combine a few points and they know who you are. They know where you are. They know what you want before you do. And they don't ask for permission. They just bury it in a privacy policy no one reads and say you agreed to it. And here's the part that messes with your head. You still keep using it. Because it's convenient. Because it's entertaining. Because it feels harmless. But it's not. It's subtle erosion. Every time you click accept, every time you say allow access, every time you say whatever, I just want to use the app, you're trading a piece of yourself. You're giving away control, not in one big moment, but slowly, in fragments, over years. And the worst part, it's not even just one platform. It's everywhere. Your phone, your smart speaker, your browser, your GPS, your wearable. It's not just what you give them. It's what they observe, what they infer, what they stitch together. They know when your sleep patterns change. They know when your mood drops. They know if you've gained weight. They know what you searched at 2 in the morning when no one else was watching. And all of that is data. All of that has value. Not to you, to them. You feel like a user. But to the system, your inventory, your raw material for targeting. And what's wild is, you agreed to it. You clicked yes. Because they made it easy. Because they made it feel normal. That's the trap. The illusion of free is powerful, but nothing is truly free if you're the one being mined. And once your data's out there, you can't reel it back in. You can't give it. You can't learn them. The system remembers, the machine adapts, and it keeps shaping your feed, your choices, your worldview, based on a version of you that it constructed from crumbs you didn't even realize you were leaving behind. So yeah, the app is free. The platform is free. The service is free. But the more you use it, the more you pay. Not with dollars. Not with coins. But with fragments of who you are. And maybe that's the question that matters. If something knows more about you than you know about yourself, who really owns your identity? The creator Burnout Paradox. You wanted to create. That's how it started. Not for fame, not for views, not for followers. Just the love of making things. You had ideas you couldn't ignore. You stayed up late editing because it felt like breathing. You posted because you wanted to. Not because you had to. But then people started watching. Then came growth. Then came expectations. And now here you are, living the dream, right? Creating full time. But somehow you're exhausted. The thing you used to love now feels like a deadline. The freedom you craved now feels like a trap. That's the paradox. You made it as a creator, and now you're burnt out from the thing that once lit you up. You wake up, and there's no off switch. Your mind is always running. What's the next idea? What's trending? Did I post today? Should I reply to comments? Is that video flopping? You don't clock out. There's no weekend. Even rest feels like guilt. Because while you're resting, someone else is posting. Someone else is growing. Someone else is taking your spot. And the numbers? They never wait. They don't care that you're tired. They just dip. They just punish you for slowing down. You thought creating full time meant more time, more balance. But now you feel like you're sprinting in place. The more you make, the more you owe. Every piece of content opens the door to more pressure. Every win becomes the new standard. You post something that goes viral, and instead of celebrating, your brain goes, "How do I top this? How do I repeat it? How do I not fall off?" And you start to notice it creeping in. That feeling of fatigue, of resentment. You used to make things because they meant something. Now you make them because the algorithm needs to be fed. You're not just chasing inspiration. You're chasing performance. You're not just making videos. You're managing platforms. You're optimizing. You're doing admin. You're writing captions, tracking trends, managing brand deals, uploading in 5 different formats, all while pretending to enjoy every second of it. And the audience sees the end result. The post, the story, the polished reel. But they don't see the 100 drafts that got deleted. They don't see you staring at a screen, doubting everything you make. They don't see the mental tug of war, wanting to be consistent, but also wanting to disappear for a week and not explain yourself. And even if they do see it, the internet doesn't slow down. It forgets quickly. Miss a few uploads and the algorithm ghosts you like you never existed. This isn't just a creative block. It's a system-level exhaustion. Burnout doesn't come from doing too much once. It comes from doing too much constantly, with no pause, no break, no sense of enough. That's the trap for full-time creators. You feel like if you stop, everything you've built disappears. That your entire career lives on a feed that can forget you in a week. And here's the kicker. The more successful you are, the worse it can get. The stakes get higher. The pressure builds. Suddenly, it's not just you making stuff for fun. It's your job. your identity, your income, your reputation. Your entire world is tied to your output. And if the output slows down, you feel like you're failing, even if you're still doing more than most people ever could. You look around and think, how is everyone else keeping up? But the truth is, most of them aren't. Most of them are quietly drowning too, creating through exhaustion, uploading through anxiety, smiling on camera while falling apart off screen. And you tell yourself, just push through. Just get this next post up. Just ride this next trend. But it never ends. There's always a next, because this isn't just about content. It's about pace. And when the platform runs at full speed 24/7, you feel like you can never rest without losing everything you gained. So you keep going and going until you break, or fade, or stop recognizing the version of yourself that used to create for joy instead of survival. That's the paradox. You dreamed of this life. And now that you have it, it's draining you. Not because you're weak, not because you're ungrateful, but because the system was never built to be sustainable. It was built to be constant, and no human is meant to be constant. So maybe it's not about doing more. Maybe it's about doing less, on purpose, not quitting, not giving up, but reclaiming the reason you started. Because burnout isn't a failure. It's a signal, a loud one, saying you were never meant to create endlessly without breathing. And if the dream costs you your peace, maybe it's time to dream different. The viral success paradox, it happens fast. You post something, maybe it's funny, maybe it's deep, maybe it's totally random, and then it hits. Views go from hundreds to thousands, then millions, notifications exploding, comments flooding in, follows stacking. People you've never met suddenly know your face, your name, your voice. You go viral, and for a moment, it feels like everything changed. This is it. This is the moment you were waiting for. Except what no one tells you is that going viral feels more like being caught in a storm than stepping into the spotlight. That rush is real, but it comes with something darker. Because after that first big hit, the next thought creeps in. Can I do it again? That's the paradox. You get success so fast, it tricks you into thinking you've made it. But virality isn't stability. It's not a career. It's a spike, a flash. And once the peak fades, and it always fades, you're left chasing something you can't repeat on command. The fame is instant, but the pressure to sustain it, that's forever. When something blows up online, people think it means you're set, that the doors are all open now. But virality doesn't come with a blueprint. You don't get instructions. You just wake up and suddenly the internet knows who you are. But only for that one thing. That one moment. That one video. That one version of you. And if you try to pivot, if you try to grow or show something new, people lose interest. The algorithm forgets you. The crowd moves on. And now you're stuck in this weird limbo. Because the attention was addictive. That dopamine hit was real. You want it again. You crave it. But nothing you post hits the same. You're making better stuff now, more thoughtful stuff, but no one's watching. Or worse, they are watching, but they only want you to do the one thing that blew up. The joke, the format, the rant. Whatever version of you went viral becomes your cage. And that pressure starts to erode you. Every time you create, you're comparing it to the high you hit once. You're chasing the lightning, trying to bottle it again. And when it doesn't strike twice, you start questioning everything. Was it luck? Was it a fluke? Am I already irrelevant? That's the part nobody prepares you for. Viral success gives you attention, but not direction. Not support, not structure. You're still on your own, but now with the added stress of being watched. You're in the spotlight, but with no foundation beneath you. No team. No strategy. Just this massive wave of expectation crashing down over and over again. And the mental roller coaster. It's brutal. One week you feel famous. The next you feel forgotten. One post brings you thousands of followers. The next one gets ignored. And your worth gets tangled in that feedback loop. You start to believe the numbers. High views mean you're valuable. Low views mean you're nothing. It's irrational, but it's real. Because the system rewards moments, not consistency. Shock, not substance. And sure, some people do turn that one moment into a long-term thing. But even they'll tell you, the hardest part isn't going viral. It's surviving after. It's showing up when the views drop. It's building something real while everyone else remembers you for a single post. You realize that going viral didn't solve anything. It just raised the stakes. It introduced more eyes, more judgment, more pressure, without giving you more tools. And now, instead of creating from a place of curiosity or passion, you're creating from fear. Fear of being forgotten. Fear of missing your window. Fear of not living up to a version of yourself you didn't even plan. The truth is, virality feels like winning the lottery. But without the money, without the infrastructure, just the chaos, the spotlight, and then the silence. And that silence is deafening. Because once you've felt that rush, regular attention feels like failure. But it's not. It's just reality. The problem is, no one celebrates sustainability. No one tells you that slow, steady growth is actually stronger. Because it doesn't trend. It doesn't shock. But it lasts. That's the paradox. Viral success looks like the finish line. But really, it's just the loudest beginning. And if you're not ready for what comes after, that moment of fame can leave you emptier than when you started. So maybe the goal isn't to go viral. Maybe the goal is to build something solid enough that you don't break when the views come and when they disappear, because success that lasts doesn't come in a flash. It comes from creating even when no one is watching. The Censorship Paradox, it starts with something simple. A post flagged, a comment removed, a video taken down. You scroll past it and think, yeah, that probably crossed a line. Misinformation, harmful content, hate speech. It makes sense to delete it, right? No one wants lies spreading like wildfire. No one wants people to get hurt because of something they read or watched online. But then it happens again and again. But now it's not just conspiracy threads or blatant hate. It's satire. It's unpopular opinions. It's people asking hard questions. And that's when it gets weird. Because the line between protecting truth and silencing voices starts to blur. That's the paradox. The more we try to fight disinformation, the more we risk suppressing the very thing we say we're protecting, free speech. At first glance, it sounds easy. Just remove the lies. Flag the bad actors. But who gets to decide what's false? Who defines what's dangerous? And what happens when the truth itself becomes inconvenient? When the facts evolve? When yesterday's banned post becomes today's accepted view? We've seen it already, in real time. Experts get things wrong. Platforms overcorrect. Algorithms misfire. Legitimate perspectives get lumped in with toxic content. And suddenly nuance dies. Everything becomes binary. Right or wrong, allowed or not, visible or deleted. It's not just about the content. It's about control. The people running these platforms hold more influence over public discourse than most governments. With a few clicks, They can decide what millions, sometimes billions, of people get to see, what conversations get buried, what voices get amplified. It's not always malicious, but it is powerful. And power without transparency is a dangerous thing. Think about it. You post something that challenges a mainstream narrative, respectfully, thoughtfully, and it disappears. No explanation, no appeal. Maybe it violated some vague policy. Maybe it just didn't align with what the algorithm was trained to push. But now your voice is gone. Your thoughts are invisible. And everyone else watching, they get the message too. Stay inside the lines. Speak safely. Or risk getting silenced. And here's where it really gets tricky. Censorship doesn't just affect the person being silenced. It affects everyone else watching. It creates a chilling effect. People start self-censoring, not because they believe they're wrong, but because they're afraid of getting flagged, afraid of being misunderstood, afraid of disappearing from the feed. So they shrink, they sanitize, they speak less, or not at all, and that makes the internet quieter, not kinder, not smarter, just more controlled. We forget that truth isn't static. It's messy, it evolves. It gets debated, dissected, refined. That's how we grow. That's how we learn. But when everything gets filtered through a moderation system built to avoid risk at all costs, we lose that messy middle ground. We lose the space for uncomfortable questions, for fringe thinkers, for dissent. And that dissent is vital, even when it's wrong, because it forces the system to justify itself, to respond, to adapt. Without it, we're just echoing what's safe. Now, to be clear, not all speech deserves a platform. Harassment, incitement, real harm. Those aren't just opinions. But when censorship becomes the default weapon to fight everything uncomfortable, we end up weakening the very fabric of open dialogue. We end up confusing silence with peace. And that silence isn't peace. It's just control. There's something deeply ironic about using suppression to promote clarity, about trying to make the world more informed by removing voices. It sounds like protection, but it starts to feel like manipulation. And even if the intent is good, the result can still be dangerous. Because once you normalize censorship, it's hard to stop it. You build a system that can be used for anything, not just truth, but control, politics, profits, power, and the scariest part, most of us won't even notice. Because the feed keeps scrolling, the content keeps coming, but something shifts underneath. The range of thought gets narrower, the boldness gets softer, the questions get safer, and before long, we're all living in a version of reality that feels curated, not just by what's shown, but by what's missing. So yeah, disinformation is a real problem. But silencing isn't always the answer. Sometimes the solution is more speech, not less. Better speech, smarter debate, transparency over control. Because the moment we decide that the way to fight lies is to erase people, we don't just lose the battle for truth. We lose the right to even have it. And maybe that's the uncomfortable truth we need to sit with. That in trying to protect the conversation, we might just be killing it. The Deepfake Paradox, you see the video, it looks real, sounds real, the expressions, the voice, even the way they blink, it's flawless. A politician saying something wild, a celebrity confessing something dramatic, and your brain goes, wow, did they actually say that? Did that really happen? Except they didn't, it didn't. And now you're not so sure. You pause, rewind, question yourself, because it looks too real to be fake, and too fake to be real. That's the paradox. Deepfakes are getting better, more convincing, more entertaining, and somehow more terrifying. We built them for fun, for film, for fantasy. But they might just be the thing that breaks our ability to believe anything at all. It started small. A filter here. A voice change there. Funny stuff. Lip-syncing apps. Parodies. Movie scenes reimagined with new faces. And it was amazing. You could be anyone. Swap voices. Drop your face onto a music video. It was all fun and games. Until it wasn't. Because now, we're not just blurring faces. We're blurring reality. And the scariest part is how casual it feels. How fast it crept in. You used to be able to trust your eyes. Now, not so much. We've crossed into an era where evidence doesn't mean what it used to. A video used to be the final word. The proof. The thing that settled debates. Now, it's just the start of a whole new argument. Is it real? Is it altered? Is that actually them? Or just some anonymous person behind a keyboard manipulating pixels and timing? And the worst part, it's not the deepfakes themselves. It's the doubt they leave behind. You don't need millions of fakes to destroy trust. You just need the possibility. Because once you know deepfakes exist, once you've seen how good they've gotten, everything becomes suspect. That leaked video could be fake. That damaging confession may be AI. That clip of someone doing something horrible. Maybe it's not them at all, or maybe it is. But now, no one's sure. And that uncertainty is where the damage happens. Think about what that does to society, to justice, to journalism, to relationships, to politics. We're entering a world where anyone can deny anything. You catch someone on camera, and they just say that's not me. That's a fake. AI did that. And even if they're lying, it's enough to create doubt, enough to muddy the waters, enough to delay, distract, deflect. And sure, people will say, oh, but there are tools to detect fakes. There's software. There's watermarking. There's detection algorithms. And that's true, for now. But this is an arms race. For every tool that spots a fake, someone's out there building a better fake. A smarter one. A version that slips through every filter. This isn't something we can solve once. It's a moving target. And the more deepfakes show up, the more numb we get to them. The more we laugh it off. It's just a meme, just a joke, just content. But over time, something deeper starts to shift. We start asking fewer questions. Or we start asking too many. We trust less. Believe less, until the line between real and fake isn't blurry. It's gone. And here's the other twist. Deepfakes can be used for good. For art. For accessibility. For giving voices back to people who've lost theirs. For creating new kinds of storytelling. There's potential in this technology, no doubt. But that's what makes it so dangerous. It's seductive. It gives us something powerful, and we're still figuring out what the cost actually is. Because what happens when anyone can become anyone? When your image, your voice, your identity can be remixed without your consent. When people start seeing you do things you never did, and believing it. That's not just creepy. That's reputation level damage. That's blackmail. That's manipulation on a whole new scale. So yeah, deepfakes are entertaining. They're creative. They're kind of addictive to watch. But they're also a warning. A signal that we might be stepping into a future where seeing is no longer believing. Where reality has to be double-checked, verified, cross-referenced. And even then, there's always that voice in the back of your head asking, what if this is fake too? We didn't just build a new tool. We built a new kind of doubt. A permanent, low-grade suspicion that follows everything we see online. And that suspicion, that erosion of trust, might be harder to fix than any deepfake ever made. Because when the truth has to compete with a lie that looks just as real, the truth doesn't always win. The Anonymity Paradox: you log in, no real name, no photo, just a screen name, a blank avatar, and just like that, you're free. Free to speak, free to vent, free to say what you really think without the fear of being judged, doxxed, canceled, or attacked. Anonymity feels like protection, like armor. For a lot of people, it's the only way they can show up at all. It creates space for honesty, especially in a world where saying the wrong thing can ruin your life. But that same mask, that same freedom, also opens the door to something darker. Because the moment people stop being held accountable, some of them stop acting like people at all. That's the paradox. Anonymity protects the vulnerable, but it also empowers the worst. It allows people to express their deepest truths, but also their ugliest instincts. And the internet, as we know it today, was built on that contradiction. Safe expression on one side, toxic chaos on the other. Think about it. A teenager struggling with identity can go online and find a whole world of others like them. People sharing openly, vulnerably, because no one knows who they are in real life. That anonymity gives them courage. It gives them clarity. It gives them a voice. But in the next tab over, someone is hiding behind that same digital mask to bully, to harass, to threaten, and they do it with confidence. Because there's no real-world cost, no consequence. Just delete the account and start over. Anonymity strips away social filters. In person, we hold back, we soften our words, we weigh the impact. But online, when nobody knows who you are, you stop worrying about being liked or accepted. You start saying what you really think, or what you think will get the biggest reaction. That's how you get people unleashing cruelty they would never even consider saying face. To face, the screen becomes a shield. And with that shield comes a kind of moral amnesia. It's not that the internet turns people bad. It just removes the friction. And friction is what keeps us civil. In real life, there are stakes. Embarrassment, rejection, eye contact. But online, especially anonymously, the stakes vanish. So what's left is raw impulse. Sometimes that's beautiful, brave, healing, and sometimes it's vile. And here's where it gets complicated. Some people genuinely need anonymity: whistleblowers, survivors, marginalized voices, people living under regimes where saying the wrong thing can get you killed. For them, hiding their identity is the only way to be heard. It's not a luxury. It's survival. But the same system that keeps them safe also gives trolls a free pass. That duality is baked into the infrastructure, and every platform struggles with it. Do we clamp down and force real names, real photos, real IDs? That would cut down abuse. Maybe. But it would also silence the people who need protection the most. People who aren't ready to come out. People who fear retaliation. People with stories they can't tell under their real name. We'd gain control, but we'd lose something honest. So we end up in this endless loop. More moderation, more bans, more flagging systems. But the trolls adapt. They always do. Meanwhile, real users walk on eggshells, afraid of saying the wrong thing, afraid of being mistaken for a bad actor, afraid of being silenced for just trying to be themselves. Anonymity turns the internet into a double-edged sword. It lets people step into their truth, or hide from it entirely. It creates safe spaces and war zones. And because we can't see the face behind the words, we start assuming the worst. We start distrusting everyone. Every post becomes suspect. Every opinion becomes a potential fake. And that makes online spaces feel more chaotic, more aggressive, more paranoid, even when no one's saying anything wrong. The big question is, can we keep the good without feeding the bad? Can we build systems that protect vulnerable voices without enabling cruelty? Can we allow freedom without inviting destruction? Nobody's figured that out yet, but the stakes keep getting higher. Because the longer we let anonymity become a license for abuse, the more we risk losing trust in everything and everyone. And the more we try to lock it all down, the more we silence the very people who needed the internet most in the first place. That's the tension. That's the cost. And that's the paradox we still haven't solved. The mask that can reveal someone's truth or help them destroy someone else's. The digital legacy paradox. You post something today, a photo, a comment, a rant. It gets a few likes, a reply or two. Then it disappears into the scroll, forgotten, buried under layers of newer content. And you think that's it, gone. But it's not. It's still there, on some server, in some archive, stored in a database you've never seen and probably never will. That's the strange reality we live in now. Online, nothing is ever really gone. But at the same time, everything gets forgotten. This is the digital legacy paradox. You are both invisible and permanent, forgotten in the moment, preserved forever. It's wild. On one hand, you spend hours curating a feed, sharing memories, moments, opinions, and it feels like none of it matters. It fades. People scroll past it. Algorithms decide whether it even gets seen, and you wonder why you're doing it. Why post anything if it all just vanishes? But then, years later, someone digs up an old tweet, a post you barely remember writing, a photo you thought you deleted, and suddenly it's back, live, active, as if time never passed. You didn't even know it was still out there, but the internet did, and that's the tension. We want to be remembered, but only for the right things. We want to leave a mark, but we want control over that mark. What gets kept? What gets seen? What gets deleted? But the truth is, you don't have control. Not really. Not once you hit upload. Not once it spreads. Even if you delete it, someone might have saved it, shared it, archived it, recorded it, and now it's part of your digital shadow, part of your legacy, whether you like it or not. There used to be a time when we could reinvent ourselves, start over, move cities, change jobs, outgrow the mistakes we made. Now the internet keeps receipts. It documents who you were at your worst. It freezes old versions of you. And the scariest part, you don't get to decide which version of you survives. Maybe it's a dumb joke. Maybe it's a bad take. Maybe it's something you said when you were angry or ignorant or just trying to be funny. Years later, that's what people find. That's what gets passed around. And suddenly, your past self defines your present one. But on the flip side, we're terrified of being forgotten, of disappearing, of leaving nothing behind. That's why we post so much, share so much. We want to be seen, remembered, validated. We want to matter, even if it's just a few seconds of attention on a timeline that resets every day. So we upload, we record, we document our lives, hoping someone notices. And yet, deep down, we wonder if any of it will last, if anyone will care, if any of this is even real once the likes stop coming in. This is the trap. We chase visibility, but we can't control the consequences. We crave permanence, but only on our terms. And the internet doesn't care about our terms. It remembers too much, and it forgets too fast. There's something deeply human about this paradox, but wanting to be known, but only for the good parts. wanting to leave a mark. But only if we choose what that mark looks like. But digital legacy doesn't work that way. It's not a curated scrapbook. It's a mirror with no warning, no filter, no expiration date. You die, and your profiles might still be live. Your photos still floating around. Your posts still searchable. And maybe that's comforting, or maybe it's not. Maybe it means we never fully die anymore, not online. But if we're not careful, it also means we never fully live either. We live filtered, polished, paranoid, always thinking, how will this look in 5 years? Will this be used against me? Is this post worth it? And that kind of awareness, it changes how we show up. It makes everything feel like a performance, a future-proofed version of ourselves we hope ages well. But humans aren't supposed to be permanent. We're messy. We change. We regret. We grow. The internet, not so much. It just records. So here we are, posting everything and trusting nothing, hoping to be seen, but fearing what being seen really means, wanting to leave something behind. But maybe not like this, because maybe the question isn't will we be remembered. Maybe the real question is what version of us will be remembered, and are we okay with that? The truth paradox, it's never been easier to speak. You can pick up your phone right now, record a thought, press post, and it's out there. It can be seen by thousands, millions if it hits right. Every voice, every story, every angle, all at once. And that sounds like a dream, right? The rise of the people. The gatekeepers are gone. You don't need a newsroom. You don't need a studio. All you need is a screen and a signal. But here's the part we don't say out loud. Just because everyone can speak doesn't mean everyone is heard. And just because more people are talking doesn't mean the truth stands a chance. That's the paradox. The more voices we have, the harder it gets to hear the truth. It's like trying to pick out one honest whisper in a stadium full of people screaming at the top of their lungs. And it's not because people are lying more. It's because the platforms reward loud, not accurate, extreme, not thoughtful, viral, not verified. You've felt it. You scroll through your feed and you don't know what to believe anymore. This person says one thing with total confidence. Someone else says the opposite with just as much energy. Both have receipts. Both have links. Both sound smart. And suddenly you're left wondering if truth is even a thing anymore. Or just a matter of who posted first and who had better lighting. And yeah, it's amazing that more people can share their lived experience. That used to be impossible. There are voices being heard now that were silenced for generations. That's powerful. That's necessary. But in the noise, truth starts to feel optional, replaceable. If one version of the story doesn't stick, someone just makes another. Content is king, not clarity. The algorithm doesn't know or care what's true. It only knows what gets clicked, what gets shared, what keeps you scrolling. Truth used to move slow. It took time. It needed fact-checking, nuance, research. But now information has to move fast or it dies. So what do? We simplify, we cut corners. We turn complexity into hot takes, into memes, into outrage. And that's what spreads. That's what gets noticed. Truth just doesn't compete well with spectacle. And it's not just misinformation. It's overinformation. Too many angles. Too many claims. Too many experts. And the irony is, we're more informed than ever, but also more confused. Because knowing everything doesn't help if you don't know what's real. So we start picking sides. Not based on facts, but based on familiarity, belief, identity. It's easier that way. You trust what feels right, not what checks out. And suddenly, truth becomes tribal, filtered through your bubble, reinforced by the voices that agree with you, dismissed by the ones that don't. And the scariest part, you might not even realize it's happening. This isn't about intelligence. It's not about who's smart and who's not. It's about overload. When you're overwhelmed, your brain does what it has to. It clings to certainty. Even if that certainty is wrong, it's not a failure of logic. It's survival. And now we have this weird dynamic where everyone thinks they're right and no one trusts each other. Every fact feels like an opinion. Every expert feels like a puppet. Every source can be dismissed with one comment: do your research. But what research? Which version? Which interpretation? The line between truth and narrative has never been thinner. And in all this chaos, truth doesn't just get lost. It gets devalued. People stop looking for it altogether. They just want confirmation. They want something that fits their story, their side, their feed. Truth becomes a prop, a weapon, a brand. And yet, we still crave it. Deep down, we still want to know what's real. We want to feel grounded. We want to believe that something, somewhere, still means something. That facts still matter. That honesty still counts. But for truth to matter again, we have to do the one thing the internet makes hardest: slow down. Question ourselves. Listen without assuming. Speak without shouting. Admit when we don't know. And that's hard, especially in a space that punishes silence, rewards confidence, and buries anything that doesn't go viral. So here we are, surrounded by voices, drowning in opinions, searching for a truth that doesn't trend. It's not that truth disappeared. It's that it got crowded out. Outshouted. Outpaced. And until we learn how to tell the difference between signal and noise, between volume and value, we'll keep mistaking what's popular for what's real. And that's the most dangerous kind of silence. When the truth is still here, but no one can hear it.